Elven soldiers report that the barrier has shattered and the dragon forces are closing in from the front, forcing Anastasia Imperial to descend and face the enemy commanders. Anastasia raises her arms, calling countless falling stars to answer her summons, then unleashes the devastating meteor storm down upon the approaching dragon warriors below. The dragon soldiers roar in fury, while an elven officer confirms that 80% of the dragon army has been eliminated by Anastasia's overwhelming assault. A massive dragon looms overhead, her identity as the Elven Empire's Millennium Genius Magician reaffirmed. Sensing an enormous surge of magic power, the Elven commanders realize that Naga is preparing the Dragonkin's forbidden last technique, the fearsome Heavenly Dragon King Cannon. Panicked soldiers beg Anastasia to evacuate immediately before the sacred relic Eternal Heart falls into enemy hands, but she refuses to abandon her post despite the danger. Anastasia chants an ancient incantation drawn from forgotten elven spells, calling upon the flames of creation to grant her hand absolute and world-ending power. Her ultimate attack, Violet Nova, erupts against Naga's incoming cannon fire as both immense forces collide directly above the battlefield in a blinding clash. The two colossal attacks detonate together, engulfing the sky in a searing white explosion that consumes the battlefield and everything caught within its radius. When the light fades, Anastasia drifts weightlessly above open water, confused and disoriented, wondering aloud why she now finds herself staring down at the sea. Landing on an unfamiliar shore, Anastasia calls out for her attendant Miel and General Agner, growing increasingly frightened when neither answers her desperate cries. While wandering the unfamiliar jungle, she suddenly spots a wild, disheveled man gripping a wooden club, his eyes fixed upon her. Startled by his appearance, Anastasia tries commanding the wind to blow him away, but her magic fails completely, leaving her fleeing down the beach instead. The bearded man chases after her with the club raised high, both of them screaming as they race across the sand. Cornered near a cliff's edge, Anastasia leaps outward, expecting to fly to safety, only to realize with horror that her magic has completely abandoned her. The man lunges and catches her by the ankle just before she falls, then begs her desperately for help, revealing he has been stranded alone for a week. Introducing herself as Anastasia Imperial, 7th Princess of the Elven Empire, she explains that a violent magical collision cast her onto this desert island. Shioten Daiku questions why she speaks Japanese yet looks unlike any local child, assuming her elaborate costume is simply an elaborate school play. When Anastasia asks about his ship, insisting one must have brought him here, Daiku explains his own vessel sustained no damage, concluding she must be a traumatized shipwreck survivor lost in delusion. Daiku gently reassures her he understands, while Anastasia stares in disbelief. Daiku insists she is a middle schooler incapable of real magic, arguing they must accept harsh reality to survive together on this isolated island. Furious at being doubted, Anastasia declares herself a great magician and attempts another spell, but nothing happens as Daikuku drags her away. She frantically tries casting Meteor Storm, then Glacial Bream, then Heal, each spell failing completely as Daiku watches her struggle. Daikuku shouts for her to look behind, revealing a strange gelatinous creature approaching, which Anastasia identifies as the dreaded slimy suffocating demon. Confused why her magic refuses to work now of all times, Anastasia realizes something is seriously wrong as the creature edges dangerously closer toward them both. Dismissing it as merely an ordinary slime, Anastasia turns carelessly toward the creature, unaware it is about to seize her completely by surprise. Instead, the slime wraps tightly around her body, restraining her limbs and pressing into her mouth until she can no longer breathe or move. Struggling desperately, Anastasia realizes with dawning horror that even beginner magic would normally handle a creature like this, confirming her powers are truly gone. Flashing back, young Anastasia recalls how her mother, Consort Lamina, was unfavored at court, leaving her constantly neglected and overlooked by everyone around her. Everything changed the day her magical power awakened, with elders declaring her a once-in-a-thousand-years genius as her father finally praised his daughter. She realizes every bond, every ounce of status and affection she'd earned came entirely from her magical talent, leaving her terrified of losing it all now. Back in the present, Daiku suddenly charges forward toward the restrained princess, throwing himself directly into danger to save her from suffocating. He strikes wildly at the creature with his bare fists, splashing through its gelatinous body as he fights desperately to free Anastasia from its grip. Screaming with effort, Daiku tears the slime away piece by piece, finally pulling Anastasia free from its suffocating hold and clutching her. Carrying her away from danger, Daiku sighs in relief that they escaped safely, while Anastasia remains too shaken to speak after the terrifying ordeal. Catching his breath, Daiku explains the creature ambushes anyone who lowers their guard, wrapping around victims' faces until they suffocate completely, calling it truly dangerous. Anastasia notes it is technically just a slime, though Daiku admits he named it himself after nearly dying to it on his very first day stranded here. Quietly, Anastasia admits she can no longer use any magic at all, prompting Daiku to ask directly why he'd bothered returning to rescue her. He explains he doesn't care who or what she truly is, insisting he is simply fulfilling his adult responsibility since helping her offers him no real benefit. Gripping her shoulder, Daiku promises to help her regardless of whether she is unwell, delusional, or powerless, and Anastasia stares back in silence. Working through the night, Daiku struggles to start a fire manually, muttering that humans were always considered far behind elves magically, yet never imagined it'd be this severe. Anastasia suddenly clutches her chest, startling Daiku with her sudden pained reaction, though she dismisses his concern and insists nothing serious is actually wrong. Privately wondering whether her powerlessness stems from a physical problem, she questions how long Daiku intends continuing his futile attempts at manually creating fire. Determined to focus and hone her entire body's sensitivity, Anastasia suddenly notices something unusual. Realizing the ambient mana surrounding this particular island feels remarkably faint, she reasons through the mechanics silently, understanding that magic requires both a caster's inner power and sufficient mana floating naturally within the surrounding atmosphere. Anastasia theorizes that adjusting her own magical output to match this island's thin mana concentration might finally allow her to successfully cast spells again, declaring herself not useless after all. She concentrates entirely on sensing the weak ambient mana, then chants her incantation to summon Meteor Storm once more. A single pitiful pebble drops weakly to the ground instead of a meteor, prompting Daiku to dash forward and shield Anastasia from the disappointing result. Despite the underwhelming spell, Anastasia realizes her theory worked and gently gathers dry tinder together while Daiku blows to help the ember catch. Together they nurture the small ember through cupped hands, breathing gently and steadily until the tiny spark gradually grows stronger within the gathered kindling. The kindling finally catches properly, bursting into a genuine flame, and Daiku happily announces that thanks to her efforts, they successfully lit their fire. Watching the flames dance, Daiku admits his amazement that her magic proved completely real, while Anastasia beams proudly at finally being taken seriously again. Daikuku apologizes for having dismissed her earlier as delusional, admitting he never truly imagined magic could actually exist outside of stories. Anastasia confesses that having him beside her makes any difficulty feel surmountable, calling the moment his fire lit the first time she'd witnessed anything so amazing. Anastasia collapses with her magic drained, grumbling about the island's terrible mana efficiency, while Daiku anxiously asks if she is tired. Rushing through the mothership's corridors, an elven soldier urgently reports that the dragon race has broken through the barrier and is rapidly approaching. Startled by the alarming news, Anastasia demands details on the enemy's distance, suspecting with dread that Dragon King Naga himself might be leading this assault. A tiny winged creature suddenly bites her finger, and she realizes with confusion that the approachy NG dragons have somehow shrunk down to insect-sized proportions. Panicking over what appears to be a miniaturized dragon invasion, Anastasia frantically requests immediate reinforcements, insisting this strange emergency demands urgent military attention. She wakes abruptly on the beach, realizing it was only a dream, and recalls once again being blown onto this isolated island by magical collision, having abandoned every attempt to escape using magic. Since this island's mana proved far too weak, Anastasia had no choice but to remain overnight, waking covered in insect bites after barely sleeping. Anastasia complains furiously about the island's ferocious bugs while noticing Daiku is nowhere. RB, Jean. Her heart suddenly skips again, worrying her, though she insists nothing's wrong when Daiku questions her strange behavior. Determined to handle the mysterious symptom privately, Daiku reveals he'd been busy constructing makeshift signal markers from driftwood, hoping search teams might eventually notice and locate her position on the island. Anastasia reassures him such effort wasn't necessary, confident her army would soon locate her, since the Elven Empire tracks her position through magical means. When Daiku admits total confusion about any battlefield, Anastasia reminds him incredulously that a massive war threatening the entire world's fate is currently raging. Sighing, Anastasia reluctantly agrees to offer him a simplified explanation, while Daiku mutters that perhaps such conflicts simply don't concern weaker races like humans. She explains that 3 major races divide and rule the world: the demons of Niflheim, the dragons of Muspelheim, and the elves of Alfheim. All 3 nations are fighting fiercely over the Eternal Heart, a giant mana crystal said to hold infinite magical power within its core. Whichever race manages to claim the Eternal Heart for themselves will surpass every other nation, essentially dominate the entire world completely. Daiku realizes she wasn't lying about possessing real magic, though her claims about impending world war mean humanity should probably start preparing themselves. S2. Anastasia mentions she hasn't had any water since yesterday, politely asking Daiku if he could possibly spare some to quench her growing thirst. Daiku recalls that palm trees bearing fruit were once plentiful when he first arrived, though he apologizes now for having no water available. He explains that coconuts once solved both his food and water problems, delaying exploration since he expected rescue soon, but ate the very last one yesterday. Realizing magic remains practically impossible here due to weak mana, Anastasia decides to patiently wait, remaining certain a rescue party is already searching for her. Anastasia explains that with faint mana, magic power cannot transmit information properly, meaning her army would never locate her position on this island. Daiku realizes rescue from her side is equally hopeless, while Anastasia frantically wonders if physically searching the entire island remains their only viable option. Now, suddenly remembering something important, Anastasia announces she knows exactly where to find water, just as dizziness overtakes her from worsening dehydration symptoms. Daiku recalls that on his first day exploring, he'd spotted a pool of water but ignored it since he lacked any proper container. Determined now, Daiku insists securing water immediately is their top priority, since neither of them knows exactly when rescue might finally arrive. While walking through the forest together, Anastasia suddenly cries out in pain, admitting she'd apparently stepped on something sharp hidden among the undergrowth. Examining her injured foot, Daiku determines it is merely a scratch from a dead branch, though Anastasia insists loudly that he release her immediately. She explains she normally travels using levitation magic, which is why she'd never needed shoes, prompting Daiku to ask why he himself wears none. Daiku warns her thick cape will cause heat stroke in this heat despite her dehydration, but Anastasia stubbornly refuses to remove her ceremonial garment. She reveals the cape symbolizes frontline commanders responsible for the Elven Empire's fate, a treasured gift originally given to her by her father. Anastasia declares she'll never remove it until presenting the Eternal Heart to her father. Despite Daiku's protests about the dangerous heat, they finally reach the remembered location, only for Daiku to realize with horror that the water pool has completely disappeared since his first visit. Devastated by the sight, Anastasia collapses, complaining her throat feels dry while her head pounds, and her entire body feels heavy. Daiku shakes her, refusing to accept defeat, trying to keep Anastasia conscious and responsive. DSP 8. The seemingly hopeless situation before them. Daiku presses something cold and wet against her lips, and Anastasia registers the sensation, wondering aloud whether what she is tasting is actually water. Grattling her, Daiku continues offering whatever moisture he has managed to gather, watching her expression for any sign of improvement. Anastasia recovers enough to sit up, though she scolds Daiku for making her drink something without first explaining what it actually was. Daiku demonstrates wrapping damp soil inside cloth and squeezing, revealing that groundwater remains humid even after the surface pool had dried. He explains the cloth filters out dirt and sand, effectively producing drinkable water, and mentions digging deeper could reach an actual water pool. Impressed by his resourcefulness, Anastasia insists he drink his own remaining portion too, refusing to let herself be the only one staying hydrated. Anastasia declaring herself the princess of the Elven Empire who would never drink water squeezed, storming off in disgust, while Daiku noted how little she understood. Anastasia accusing Daiku of hiding behind noble talk about carrying the Elven Empire's fate, while P, roving through his actions, that his words meant nothing. Daiku challenged her resolve, asking if someone claiming determination to survive at any cost should D not first swallow her pride and take care of her own body before chasing bigger duties. Daiku insisted that nothing mattered than escaping, and Anastasia's silence suggested his blunt reasoning had finally started chipping away at her wound. Deed royal pride. Anastasia admitting she could never face her father again if she abandoned the dignity he entrusted to her, torn between duty and the shame. Daiku clarified he was not criticizing her choices, only urging her to reconsider, and Anastasia turned away, her expression tightening as she wrestled with his unwelcome but honest words. Shen Mort. Anastasia lifted the wrung sock to her lips, hesitating as muddy droplets fell, forcing herself to accept the humiliating truth of their desperate situation on the island. She drank, declaring she would survive at any cost, even if it meant swallowing water squeezed from a stinking sock, while Daiku watched, silently offering her another. The male revealed gathered liquid materials, estimating 6 liters available for their immediate survival. He described severe conditions required significant consumption, meaning reserves might disappear inside days. Anastasia observed numerous containers and questioned their source, worried regarding their peculiar abundance. The male described sea currents bore discarded containers ashore, unsettling Anastasia despite practical benefits. Accepting truth reluctantly, she accepted necessity outweighed cleanliness concerns while preserving precious liquid materials. The male admitted grave hunger, startling Anastasia while showing neither had eaten anything. They headed searching for food prior to darkness reached. Understanding liquid collection engulfed valuable time. While moving jointly, Anastasia recognized she still knew no thing about the man's identity. The male presented himself as Shuden Daikiku, an instructor from Tokyo, pleasing Anastasia deeply. Anastasia misunderstood his profession as mystic expertise, as Shuden clarified teaching language rather there. Anastasia admired Shuden's abilities, although he denied expertise and outlined himself modestly rather. Shuden described endurance hobbies taught useful insight, although experience remained limited and theoretical. Despite denying expertise, he pledged guarding Anastasia and fleeing jointly from danger safely. His speech stirred Anastasia emotionally, making her rattled as blaming an imaginary condition. Continuing their search, Shuden examined coastal stones cautiously while Anastasia trailed behind. Searching shoreline stones, Shuden located something edible and summoned Anastasia over promptly there. He proudly revealed collected shellfish, declaring the little sea creatures their dish for endurance. Anastasia questioned choosing shellfish despite abundant catch, questioning such peculiar seafood completely rather. Shazuden described fishing needed equipment, while shellfish offered simpler nourishment and force, rejecting limitations. Anastasia moved ahead confidently, declaring her magic could catch effortlessly. Anastasia noticed catch under shallow waters, immediately preparing sorcery proudly to prove herself. Chanting assuredly, Anastasia summoned mighty currents, creating a swirling prison about unsuspecting catch. Her spell caught the catch effectively, making Anastasia delighted with her magical achievement. Anastasia demanded Shuden swiftly collect the catch. As he rejoiced her successful demonstration, Shuden moved towards the spinning liquid prison, eagerly attempting securing their hard-earned dish. Shuden reached towards the caught catch, but Anastasia's unstable spell burst apart surprisingly. The explosion hurled Anastasia into salt water, making Shuden stunned while catch escaped freely. Recognizing risk immediately, Shuden abandoned everything else and carried Anastasia onto coast cautiously. Anastasia coughed weakly and fought airflow, prompting Shuden to urgently check her state. Shuden assisted expel swallowed salt water, patting Anastasia's back until her airflow slowly steadied. Anastasia stayed nauseous after swallowing salt water, as Shuden anxiously checked whether her condition better, explaining mystic exhaustion and hunger. Anastasia regained gradually until Shuden observed something surprising. Shuden noticed numerous shellfish covering a stone and promptly showed Anastasia the finding with excitement. Though the catch escaped, Anastasia appreciated Shuden's attempt, and they created abundant shellfish instead for their dish. Shuden lifted a shellfish piece towards Anastasia, showing assurance while providing unfamiliar food. Anastasia observed nervously as Shuden let fall little shell fragments across the prepared dish before. The teacher sampled the dish first, explaining crushed shell pieces stayed edible regardless of their texture. Anastasia hesitated as listening cautiously, uncertain whether his peculiar suggestion could truly labor. Shuden outlined the taste steadily, contrasting it to snacks, encouraging Anastasia to taste some. Anastasia carefully sampled Shuden's dish, studying its taste while considering his peculiar cooking method. The unknown taste overwhelmed her at once, sparking a dramatic reaction while Shuden observed worriedly. He discovered Anastasia lacked shellfish practice, explaining her shock despite enjoying the taste. Anastasia outlined her woods upbringing, showing a limited diet centered on collected natural foods. Shuden considered on Anastasia's vulnerability, linking her restricted feeding habits to current struggles. Shuden discovered a leftover coconut, recognizing a further food source might aid Anastasia's nutritional condition. He offered coconut liquid enthusiastically, wishing its contents might provide comfort and required nourishment. Anastasia tasted the beverage cautiously, next expressed delight while appreciating its refreshing natural taste. Discussing her background, she admitted extensive mystic roles left small experience with typical foods. She remembered studying sorcery within palace libraries, leftover isolated from broader experiences beyond walls. Shuden pledged Anastasia many enjoyable events beyond endurance, wishing to broaden her limited worldview. Anastasia hesitated, reminding Shuden regarding her royal roles and the ongoing war endangering countries. Despite responsibilities ahead, she silently acknowledged anticipation for those later events with Shuden. Examining the coconut, Anastasia noted its little size offered small nourishment for healing attempts. Shuden weighed her state gravely, searching for useful ways to increase Anastasia's food intake. Shuden raised tapioca surprisingly, making Anastasia puzzled while trying to understand his strange reference. He described a popular beverage concept, describing chewy pearls and drawing inspiration for provisions. Shuden suggested mixing snail flesh within coconut, believing the texture might improve consumption considerably. Anastasia heard quietly, struggling to follow Shuden's peculiar reasoning while gripping the coconut. Shuden demonstrated the notion practically, sparking the snail flesh to slide smoothly across liquid. Anastasia swallowed the coconut mixture carefully, next reacted sharply as its surprising texture startled her. Recovering gradually, she described coconut taste softened the snail taste, creating consumption simpler overall. Heartened by improvement, Anastasia agreed another serving while the campfire illuminated their environment silently. Shuden admired her attempt, relieved seeing renewed force and assurance returning through proper nourishment. Anastasia acknowledged Shuden's resourcefulness, recognizing useful insight could prove valuable beyond mystic expertise. Anastasia enjoyed the coconut mixture deeply, next recognized Shuden never sampled his own creation prior to. Heartened by her approval, Shuden agreed the coconut and chose to test it personally. The taste overwhelmed Shuden immediately, sparking a disastrous reaction while Anastasia observed quietly, completely shocked. Anastasia slept peacefully near Shuden, unaware a shocking revelation might shortly disturb her deeply. A familiar voice reached Anastasia, sparking confusion as she abruptly identified her mother's company. Her parent emerged briefly, revealing the Elven Empire's collapse and delivering destructive news surprisingly. Anastasia refused the statement promptly, struggling frantically to accept such a ruinous possibility. An enormous worm emerged before them, reinforcing the frightening reality after the Empire's downfall. Anastasia learned her disappearance reduced battlefield troops, allowing Dragon Ruler Naga overpowering advantages everywhere. Catching further devastation faulted on Naga, she panicked while frantically denying her mother's claims. A brutal blast ended the vision suddenly, and Anastasia awakened near the campfire airflow. Recalling several days had passed without recovery, Anastasia concerned about Shuden's unexplained absence deeply. Fearing her homeland's loss, Anastasia weighed escape possibilities and tried Shuden's direction immediately. Anastasia trailed damaged branches across the forest, hoping they might lead toward Shuden's location. Catching unfamiliar voices, she grew cautious, questioning whether others inhabited the isle. Hidden amid foliage, she noticed Shuden and noticed him cautiously from a distance. Noticing peculiar sorcery, Anastasia grew suspicious, questioning whether Shuden had concealed important truths. Troubled by the possibility of deception, she rushed forward wanting replies about latest events. Panicking from suspicion, Anastasia fled across the woods while Shuden pursued. Puzzled by accusations, Anastasia released lightning sorcery versus Shuden, attempting capture before obtaining replies regarding everything. Shuden endured the strike calmly, revealing surprising assurance that deepened Anastasia's rising unease. Noticing his smile, Anastasia hesitated briefly prior to Shuden abruptly shut the space completely. Shuden pinned her down swiftly, stopping opposition while she struggled frantically under him. Shuden silenced Anastasia promptly, shielding her as a strong company approached their position unnoticed. A colossal beast emerged close, startling Anastasia as Shuden kept defensive cover over her. Shuden described the isle contained dangerous beasts, clarifying the reason after his urgent actions. He outlined the creature's territorial conduct, warning that entering its domain provoked instant strikes. Anastasia recognized the beast species, as Shuden casually showed he had by then named it. Shuden pressed immediate retreat, thinking the monster might dismiss them once they exited territory. The beast abruptly charged, regardless, causing Shuden and Anastasia inside a further dangerous predicament immediately. Without delay, Shuden seized Anastasia and rolled aside repeatedly, narrowly avoiding the strike. Their escape ended with a severe fall, making Anastasia concerned about Shuden's condition deeply. The teacher reassured Anastasia swiftly, explaining he jumped away from a cliff and survived with her. Anastasia confronted Shuden straight away, resolved to uncover secrets after the strange sorcery she witnessed. Accusing him of deception, Anastasia requested replies regarding his identity and unachievable mystic abilities. She outlined a mighty fixing spell, arguing Shuden's earlier actions matched its characteristics. Shuden showed a smartphone, confusing Anastasia since its arrival resembled unfamiliar mystic artifacts. After catching the explanation, Anastasia recognized Shuden's gadget was technology rather than sorcery itself. Shuden demonstrated smartphone videos, assisting Anastasia understand previously mysteries without involving sorcery whatsoever. Despite accounts, Anastasia stayed discouraged, struggling with her situation and unsure later prospects. Reflecting strongly, she determined she contributed small beyond awaiting recovery and completing obligations. Overcome by guilt, Anastasia faulted herself for hardships, wounds, and failures occurring about her. Shuden promptly refused her judgment, arguing Anastasia possessed abilities nobody else could provide. Shuden described his phone contained useful functions beyond communication, capturing Anastasia's full focus promptly. He showed endurance tools engulfed charge power, creating a serious limitation during island life. Recognizing Anastasia's lightning magic renewed force, Shuden celebrated a surprising solution enthusiastically. Shuden displayed stored endurance guides, explaining the smartphone provided insight whenever uncertainty emerged. Understanding her unique utility, Anastasia agreed obligation for charging the smartphone whenever required. While discussing smartphone charging assuredly, Shuden abruptly protected Anastasia from a dangerous dropping threat. A mysterious female emerged surprisingly, questioning Anastasia's lack of mystic response during danger. Recognizing the newcomer at once, Anastasia froze in shock as Worm Ruler Naga showed herself. Shuden shields Anastasia as recognizing Worm Ruler Naga, confronting and surprising figure. Naga appears assuredly naked, towering prior to witnesses, her intimidating aura stirring uncertainty everywhere. Anastasia explains Naga's dragonkin heritage, describing mighty sorcery skills, as Shuden listens anxiously and studies her. Further details reveal Naga rules dragonkin power, regarding concerns as doubting repeated disturbances from troublesome youngsters. Anastasia clarifies dragonkin customs, making Shuden flustered as Naga's peculiar habits become clear. Shuden notices Anastasia's hurt neck, rising worried as urging treatment and proper clothing for Naga. Naga confirms her name, regarding complaints casually as Shuden examines Anastasia's state. He furiously accuses Naga of endangering Anastasia, thinking her reckless blow nearly showed fatal. Naga abruptly advances towards them, prompting Shuden to protect Anastasia while preparing protectively versus danger. Naga launches ahead strongly, startling onlookers as Shuden reacts immediately, expecting a further brutal confrontation. Naga grabs Anastasia playfully, doubting her absent sorcery, while Anastasia protests and struggles powerlessly. Shuden explains endurance matters. First, urging peace since conflict benefits nobody marooned jointly here. The dragoness reveals decades of dueling obsession, viewing the elf princess as the woman's sole source of enjoyment. Curious about Anastasia's reduced state, Naga proposes warming up as demanding a further mystic contest. Disregarding objections completely, Naga lifts Anastasia strongly, making Shuden shouting frantically for restraint. Shuden steps ahead protectively, separating Naga from Anastasia as rejecting intimidation despite visible wounds. Naga queries his nerve, but Shuden steadily orders Anastasia aside from impending danger. Angered by opposition, Naga abandons restraint fully, and declares Shuden her instant target. Naga strikes ferociously, unleashing overpowering power while Shuden braces himself against destructive impact. Shuden lands a counterattack surprisingly, staggering Naga momentarily and disrupting her unceasing motion. Anastasia watches Shuden carefully as Naga becomes unsettled after being hit by an typical human. She queries Shuden's background, unable to understand how somebody challenged Naga effectively solely. Shuden recalls laboring inside a severe school where violence dominated daily existence and authority. Responsible for discipline, he faced risky pupils personally, relying upon power to maintain order. Wanting direction, Shuden learned severe measures stayed accepted during chaotic eras plagued by violence. Shuden reveals his severe background waiting firm despite wounds while recalling unceasing disciplinary battles. Anastasia realizes he understands battle, although he dislikes violence and prefers stopping greater harm. Naga queries his reasoning, left over unconvinced as Shuden refuses backing down away from confrontation. Excited by opposition, Naga announces preliminary measures and approaches Shuden with fresh enthusiasm. Declaring a warm-up, she charges hostilely towards Shuden, eager to keep their escalating combat. Naga unleashes Wormclaw Burst, making destructive shockwaves as Shuden narrowly avoids straight damage. Shuden witnesses smashed terrain, struggling to comprehend the overpowering power generated by Naga strikes ceaselessly again, prompting Shuden to wonder whether Dragonkin possess mystic skills. She breathes flame surprisingly, shocking Shuden and showing her monstrous power exceeds predictions deeply. Delighted by opposition, Naga urges continuation as Shuden considers retreat versus her frightening strength. Shuden analyzes Naga's motions, explaining her reckless style differs deeply away from disciplined battle methods. Anastasia interprets the circumstances, suggesting Naga restrains herself since worry for her servant limits attempt. Naga furiously rejects the claim, declaring overpowering superiority as Shuden remains puzzled. Earth tremors spread about Shuden as Naga promises transformation, prompting him to maintain calm. Naga reveals a colossal dragon form, making Shuden shocked as the confrontation reaches a frightening climax. Shuden gazed in shock as Dragoness ruler Naga emerged, declaring people worthy sacrifices. Naga advanced assuredly, pledging devastation next while Shuden braced himself and Anastasia observed anxiously. Expecting danger, Shuden reacted instantly, colliding versus Naga's strike and stopping momentum completely across sheer power. Anastasia described people store mana internally, enabling transformations also across mystically deprived regions and harsh conditions. Mana depletion reduced Naga severely, stopping transformation skills, making her vulnerable. Naga requested replies about her weakness while Anastasia determined Shuden possessed sincere victory chances. Rejecting humiliation, Naga rejected human interference and lunged ahead aggressively, resolved to prove superiority. She released a fierce blow, challenging Shuden directly as relying solely upon leftover strength. Shuden barely responded prior to Naga's strike closed distance rapidly, causing immediate defensive. Their fists clashed again and again as Shuden recognized Naga's natural physical strength stayed overwhelmingly formidable. Shuden sensed danger immediately as Naga grabbed in chance, causing him into abrupt vulnerability again. Naga caught him tightly versus her chest, attempting command while he looked for escape routes. Exploiting motion, she hurled Shuden aside strongly, making distance and disrupting his balance. Anastasia checked Shuden swiftly, relieved he avoided grave wound despite bleeding away from his nose. Shuden rejected concerns casually, while Anastasia likened his endurance versus demanding endurance conditions endured. Shuden hit himself deliberately, shocking Anastasia as Naga grinned, recognizing a significant shift promptly. Activating Mad Spirit Rising, he boosted physical skills across Ache, enduring impacts without hesitation. Naga welcomed his determination eagerly while Shuden readied draining leftover mana for combat. She struck once more, but Shuden focused briefly on her strange gesture amid battle. Shuden stopped strongly, shattering wooden debris apart as Naga pressed ahead with unceasing aggression. Shuden warned Naga's worm claws stayed dangerous, while Anastasia realized typical defenses offered small protection. Shuden observed something approaching surprisingly, drawing attention aside from Naga's unceasing offensive pressure. Naga lunged assuredly, but Shuden grabbed the opportunity and seized the incoming item mid-air. Recognizing an elven sorcery blade, Shuden stopped Naga's claw prior to launching a counterattack swiftly. Shuden's punch connected firmly, making Naga shocked and speechless as motion shifted dramatically. Seizing the chance, Shuden drove a powerful punch forward, hitting Naga with overpowering power. Naga plunged backward from impact, shocked completely, while Shuden stayed ready for opposition afterward. Validating victory, he proposed restraining unconscious Naga swiftly before she regained awareness. Surprisingly, confronted with Naga's state, Shuden hesitated awkwardly, unsure the way restraint should be handled. Anastasia observed his worry promptly, becoming irritated while interpreting his attention towards Naga. Shuden came back Anastasia's blade respectfully, recognizing its worth after relying upon improvised arms repeatedly. Anastasia questioned his assumptions steadily, explaining her silence never considered rage towards anyone. Gripping the blade cautiously, she revealed emotional reasons after keeping the treasured weapon close. Shuden listened gravely, while Anastasia outlined endurance, responsibility, and maintaining strength across meaningful possessions. Anastasia showed her mother's talisman served as protection and last resort amid wartime difficulties. Anastasia entrusted her mother's talisman blade to Shuden, thinking it might improve their endurance. Shuden questioned accepting such worth, but Anastasia answered assuredly and placed faith inside him. Anastasia described the blade could secure their later, expressing unwavering faith in Shuden. Shuden pledged cooperation and escape, accepting obligation as reassuring Anastasia with determination wholly. Naga abruptly awakened, acknowledging Shuden's punch stayed memorable as interrupting their heartfelt exchange. Naga admitted defeat gracefully, admired Shuden's strength. Next startled everyone by approaching him with confidence abruptly after waking. Smiling directly at Shuden, Naga bravely asked for bearing his child, making Anastasia stunned and speechless by the proposal. Anastasia froze in disbelief. Her gaze widened dramatically after catching Naga's surprising declaration towards Shuden. Naga proudly described Dragonkin traditions, while Anastasia responded noisily as Shuden withstood awkward confusion. Claiming loss showed Shuden's power, Naga justified selecting him according to Dragonkin customs and traditions. Anastasia refused Naga's reasoning, but Naga enthusiastically requested Shuden accept her prestigious offer. Shuden listed endurance difficulties, arguing childbirth and parenting stayed unrealistic under their conditions. Naga misunderstood Shuden's concerns, wholly demanding obedience as declaring her motives were unquestionably grave. Ignoring hesitation, she pinned Shuden assuredly as Anastasia observed nervously and fought processing events. She abruptly halted herself, admitting exhaustion reduced her determination and reconsidering instant pursuit entirely. Choosing practicality rather, Naga declared schemes for food, making Anastasia puzzled by changes. Prior to departing, she noticed Shuden speak, sparking her attention to shift towards him immediately. Shuden invited Naga to cooperate, proposing mutual backing as Anastasia silently noticed their interaction. He described their endurance chances improved jointly, noting a peculiar connection existed between them. Naga proudly declined companionship, insisting her status required independence before suddenly making their company. Anastasia remembered Naga's earlier strength, recognizing her current condition differed deeply from predictions. Considering later dangers cautiously, Anastasia questioned whether magic and mana could somehow be renewed. Anastasia approached as Shuden proposed coming back campward first, prioritizing treatment for their wounds. Shuden cleaned Anastasia's injury using filtered liquid, explaining infection dangers where medical aid remained unavailable. Anastasia listened attentively, next accepted the boiled liquid, appreciating Shuden's cautious endurance knowledge and judgment. She assuredly claimed healing sorcery handled wounds, easily revealing limited understanding of typical medical practices. But Shuden treated her neck cautiously, sparking slight discomfort while Anastasia withstood steadily. Shuden applied disinfectant cautiously, startling Anastasia as intense stinging spread throughout her treated injury. While explaining disinfectant benefits, Shuden showed Naga's severed claw, startling Anastasia deeply amid treatment. Interested promptly, he borrowed the claw, thinking its power could become a useful implement. Anastasia described Naga's reduced blessings, noting mana depletion lowered defensive magic and physical enhancement. Discussing elven traits, Anastasia outlined innate blessings granting protection, power, and various mystic skills. Anastasia demonstrated mana results using her locks, displaying older strands stayed stronger than newer growth. Shuden recognized Naga probably reached later, explaining why mana depletion had affected her separately. Inspired abruptly, Shuden moved indoors, making Anastasia confused while pursuing a surprising idea. Merging Naga's claw with Anastasia's durable locks, Shuden suggested crafting effective fishing equipment jointly. Anastasia rose speechless as Shuden eagerly advanced his scheme using peculiar supplies without hesitation. Shuden tested newly crafted fishing gear while Anastasia observed silently, reflecting upon latest events cautiously. The elf princess asked his interest in Naga, suspecting he intended building friendship regardless of tensions. Shuden raised their peculiar connection, prompting Anastasia to describe long-standing rivalry among clans historically. Anastasia remembered numerous duels where she and Naga fought fiercely, but neither secured victory. Understanding slowly shaped, Shuden recognized Naga's obsession stemmed from hearing an equal opponent finally ask surprisingly about age. Anastasia showed her days, next scolded Shuden for asking rudely. She described her effect over wartime affairs, as Shuden reconsidered beliefs about elven lifespans. Regardless of responsibilities and history, she acknowledged spending time with Naga stayed wholly unthinkable. As fishing, Shuden considered cautiously, doubting whether Anastasia's extraordinary claims might actually prove true. Accepting conditions briefly, Shuden remembered a familiar tale and chose cooperation over kept doubt. Shuden shared a story explaining foes survive jointly by cooperating versus dangers, endangering everyone equally. Anastasia heard silently as he proposed postponing conflicts until everyone escaped the isle safely. Shuden emphasized teamwork's benefits, thinking combined strengths might deeply improve their chances of endurance. Testing his handmade gear, Shuden hooked a catch effectively, astonishing Anastasia with instant results. With pride displaying the catch, he showed his notion worked, making Anastasia genuinely impressed. Using their successful catch, Shuden readied catch over a flame, creating a satisfying dish together. Anastasia enjoyed the cooked catch deeply, appreciating food quality despite their difficult conditions deeply. As gathering supplies, Shuden looked for useful debris, teaching Anastasia resourcefulness across practical examples. Shuden located valuable containers amid wreckage, exciting Anastasia as materials kept accumulating steadily. Reviewing progress steadily, he noted better conditions, while Anastasia appreciated their rising stability jointly. While heading towards fishing grounds, Shuden observed something peculiar ahead, interrupting their typical routine completely. They discovered Naga collapsed on the earth drained, making both Shuden and Anastasia stunned. Anastasia and Shuden find unconscious Naga on shore, recognizing her name. Shuden notices bleeding injuries across Naga's form, prompting worry as Anastasia watches quietly. Thinking treatment essential, Shuden decides bearing Naga campered promptly, and Anastasia agrees readily, despite uncertainty lingering. They place Naga upon woven bedding, examining wounds cautiously while preparing practical aid for healing attempts. Observing inflammation and fever signs, Shuden realizes Naga's injury remains grave, requiring pressing attention. Shuden realizes Naga's infection was able to become fatal, as Anastasia worries medicine remains wholly unavailable. Anastasia asks regarding assisting Naga, and Shuden insists they must attempt each feasible measure. She questions saving Naga despite hostility, while Shuden refuses discarding somebody meeting death solely. Shuden prepares treatment cautiously, boiling liquid and cloths first, aiming to disinfect injuries correctly. As applying disinfectant, Naga abruptly reacts violently, startling Shuden and disrupting his medical attempts. Anastasia offers assistance willingly, while Shuden struggles regarding Naga since ache keeps provoking opposition. Shuden instructs Anastasia cautiously, assigning injury cleaning roles while requesting she restrain Naga rather. Naga thrashes fiercely amid care, nearly hitting Shuden as Anastasia anxiously watches unfolding chaos. Shuden reacts swiftly, seizing command prior to Naga's motions disrupt treatment and worsen injuries further. Pinning Naga steadily, he orders instant action, making an opportunity for treatment to keep. Naga breaks free abruptly, lunging aside, despite weakness, causing Shuden to pursue her promptly. Rejecting escape, Shuden intercepts Naga straightaway, grabbing her prior to infection-driven panic carries farther. Naga crashes inside Shuden hostilely, struggling wildly as fever clouds judgment and intensifies opposition. Anastasia urges composed, clutching materials nervously as Shuden maintains command throughout the dangerous fight. Fatigue eventually overcomes Naga, allowing Shuden to restrain her safely as care resumes. Shuden prepares disinfectant cautiously, noticing Naga's opposition fading as Anastasia worries regarding her condition. Naga abruptly awakens and lashes out violently, startling both partners prior to care can proceed. Despite weakness, she strikes fiercely, causing Shuden to defend himself versus unpredictable motions. Anastasia rushes ahead bravely, assisting contain Naga while warning Shuden about fresh risk. The woman restrains Naga tightly, making a brief chance for Shuden to apply disinfectant. Shuden pours disinfectant completely onto Naga's injury, enduring screams while causing treatment across effectively. Their exhausting attempt succeeds, making Naga resting silently while the cleaned injury receives protection. Anastasia notes dwindling materials, showing merely one liquid bottle remains, despite Naga's fever. Rejecting despair, Shuden decides searching for liquid promptly, and Anastasia volunteers support without hesitation, recalling previously exploration. He recalls their discovered liquid source had by then dried up. Reviewing materials cautiously, Shuden discovers gathered bottles contain little water, alarming Anastasia considerably by then. Recalling previously attempts, they remember gathering fresh liquid amid fishing preparations and filling containers. Little catches provide food, but dwindling assets leave their overall situation increasingly difficult and unsure. Shuden prioritizes Naga's healing, offering precious liquid despite shortages as Anastasia observes. Anastasia worries Shuden neglects himself wholly, fearing fatigue could perhaps overcome him prior to Naga recovers. Shuden checks Naga's temperature cautiously as Anastasia misunderstands his work and reacts with shock. Showing correctly, Shuden confirms Naga's temperature remains grave. Explaining his assessment method clearly, Anastasia queries his mercy, questioning why he helps Naga regardless of previous hostility shown. Time passes without improvement, and Naga's temperature persists regardless of each care they attempted. Shuden concludes typical care cannot cure Naga, explaining antibiotics remain urgently essential currently. Shuden explains infection overwhelms Naga's form, as antibiotics usually prevent bacteria from worsening circumstances. Without medicine available, Naga must rely fully on natural healing, regardless of highly poor odds. Anastasia abruptly remembers a further feasible solution, offering Shuden renewed hope for saving Naga. She explains mystic protections usually resist disease, although Naga currently lacks sufficient mana. Recognizing mana could restore defensive sorcery, Shuden sees a potential path towards curing Naga. Anastasia explains people lack sorcery power, while Naga requires external mana to restore defensive magic and fitness. Shuden eagerly accepts, but Anastasia warns transferring force converts life power and demands cautious thought prior to proceeding. Keeping contact for extended periods and repeated transfers becomes essential for care success versus the infection. Anastasia reveals fall risk and dwindling materials. Shuden yet considers sacrifice to rescue Naga from death. Anastasia, Shuden, and Naga confronted a critical crisis, recognizing their endurance chances were rapidly diminishing. Shuden evaluated resources cautiously, agreeing Anastasia's worry held merit since supporting everyone stayed difficult. He considered mystic conversion possibilities, thinking physical force could become sorcery, solving shortages. Anastasia addressed Shuden as he prompting reflection until a useful solution emerged inside his thoughts. He suggested desalination using salt water in buckets. Next, question methods for collecting vapor efficiently. Shuden inspected available tools cautiously. Next, realized their gathered materials by then enabled his plan. He described saltwater distillation simply, showing Anastasia how vapor could become drinkable liquid safely. Shuden repurposed chair legs as pipes, organizing components cautiously to guide vapor efficiently. He modified the chair and built all she jointly, completing a functional distillation apparatus effectively. Confident in his invention, he asked for salt water promptly as Anastasia hurried to assist promptly. Liquid condensed across Shuden's apparatus effectively, filling bottles gradually while showing the design functioned. Shuden examined gathered liquid carefully, estimating steady production and validating dependable results for survival. Anastasia tasted the liquid carefully as Shuden heartened her evaluation of the experiment. Responded with shock, Anastasia recognizing sincere freshwater and grasping Shuden's method achieved success. She admired the invention, while Shuden described resourceful thinking revealed hidden uses inside supplies. Shuden described endurance required adaptability, encouraging Anastasia to worth flexibility over rigid predictions always. Anastasia questioned food materials, while Shuden identified liquid issues ended, but nourishment remained uncertain. He suggested trapping prey for provisions. Next, urgently summoned Anastasia to discuss support. Shuden showed a scheme assisting Naga recover as gathering resources, requesting Anastasia's strength. Anastasia accepted reluctantly, pledging cooperation and spell cancellation, although concern remained regarding Naga's condition. Shuden collected all mentally, announcing a strategy meeting as preparing their next endurance objective. Anastasia tended Naga cautiously beside base, maintaining care while monitoring ongoing healing attempts. Shuden built traps and baskets diligently, setting gear throughout wilderness areas for gathering. Coming back from labor, he carried gathered resources while Anastasia stayed beside their campsite. Their dish succeeded wonderfully, and Anastasia enjoyed nutritious provisions supporting power and healing. Anastasia enjoyed the dish deeply, and Shuden felt heartened noticing her satisfied reaction afterward. Naga stayed unconscious as receiving nourishment, as Shuden and Anastasia kept supporting her healing. Shuden reviewed materials cautiously, validating successful liquid production and measuring resources for everyone. He noted improvements stayed feasible, although current freshwater output by then supported their needs. Shuden described completed traps and markers, anticipating captured prey soon across preparations by then made. Shuden noticed Naga's lingering fever, concluding stronger sorcery stayed essential despite gradual improvement signs. Anastasia readied a healing circle about Naga, while Shuden observed the ritual cautiously. She instructed Shuden regarding care procedures, explaining requirements prior to beginning mystic restoration attempts. Anastasia showed straight physical contact transferred sorcery most efficiently inside their current circumstances available. Focused solely on rescuing Naga, Shuden suppressing distractions as bearing out essential treatment. Shuden held Naga carefully, transferring force continuously while enduring discomfort to backing her healing. Anastasia performed mighty healing magic, channeling vast force towards Naga across an elaborate ritual. The spell kept steadily, as Anastasia concentrated strongly and maintained mystic flow without interruption. She considered uneasily, doubting unfamiliar emotions arising inside her despite completing demanding sorcery. Noticing Shuden assist Naga devotedly, Anastasia grew irritated and voiced dissatisfaction with his focus. Anastasia questioned Shuden's devotion, reflecting upon sacrifices he made guarding partners despite individual dangers. Recalling by generosity, she reaffirmed faith in Shuden, recognizing his dependable character and intentions. Morning reached as drained Shuden struggled shifting, feeling drained from extensive mystic transfer. Naga regained awareness surprisingly, making Shuden startled when she awakened directly near him. Puzzled and flustered, she questioned circumstances while Shuden reacted nervously to her abrupt healing. Reduced Shuden recognized risk promptly, lacking strength to resist Naga's impulsive actions and advances. Naga ignored alerts completely, acting on uncertainty and lingering instincts as Shuden stayed overwhelmed. Naga stayed unusually attached towards Shuden, making him alarmed while recognizing his drained condition. Shuden recognized weakness stopped opposition, while Naga noticed him curiously without understanding circumstances fully. Anastasia came back bearing salt water, hearing Naga resting comfortably against Shuden. Despite confusion lingering, she asked their odd position, as Shuden concealed embarrassment and avoided detailed accounts. Lacking assurance physically, Anastasia reluctantly accepted attempting support despite limited power available herself. Shuden verified Naga's fever nearly disappeared, bringing relief as Anastasia heard with cautious optimism. Fatigue overcame him completely, and Anastasia observed his condition worsening despite successful healing attempts. Shuden located he could barely move, recognizing mystic transfer had drained vast strength. Calling determination, he finally sat upright prior to Anastasia, although fatigue yet burdened him. Overcome by hunger, Shuden acknowledged miscalculation as Anastasia offered retrieving caught prey herself. Shuden hesitated briefly, next agreed Anastasia's offer despite concerns about her security and abilities. Anastasia grabbed his bag assuredly, departing solely towards trap locations marked across terrain. Trailing Shuden's markers cautiously, Anastasia located traps positioned strategically and inspected them attentively. She accidentally emitted caught catch everywhere, becoming startled while struggling to collect them. Resolved to continue, she searched surrounding areas cautiously, wishing to recover resources effectively. Anastasia discovered caught prey effectively, celebrating briefly prior to realizing the catch was surprisingly alive. Coming back campward, she hesitated nervously as Shuden handled preparations steadily and efficiently himself. Shuden cooked the captured prey cautiously, making a substantial dish restoring depleted force. As feeding, he noticed Naga's improvement and expected complete healing very soon afterward. Anastasia considered thoughtfully. Startled, one healing ritual achieved results beyond her initial predictions. Shuden admitted helplessness regarding Naga's illness, as Anastasia listened silently and considered strongly. He thanked Anastasia sincerely, crediting her attempts for overcoming difficulties and guarding all. Awakened later, he recognizing considerable time had passed as recovering from grave fatigue. Naga abruptly approached Anastasia hostilely, making both startled while Shuden responded with alarm. Witnessing the confrontation escalate surprisingly, Shuden shouted Anastasia's name and moved towards them. Naga surprisingly threw a rabbit towards Anastasia, showing additional prey remained across the island. Anastasia questioned Naga's motives cautiously, unsure why she abruptly offered assistance without explanation. Naga described catching 2 rabbits, choosing sharing one stopped Shuden from leftover hungry. She tested Anastasia indirectly, suggesting their rivalry stayed unresolved despite latest cooperation attempts. Shuden observed bleeding about Naga's throat, suspecting she had eaten prey uncooked herself. Shuden cautioned versus raw food consumption, while Naga described worms valued fresh organs above meals. Naga discovered scarce mana reduced natural protections, eventually grasping her lingering illness and vulnerability. Discussing wounds, she recognized typical prey should never threaten dragons under usual circumstances. Naga outlined battling a Quakehog solely suffering loss despite making the creature injured. Anastasia questioned Naga's work steadily, as Shuden located the hunted animal was female. Naga tested Anastasia assuredly, declaring motives to settle their rivalry once current matters finished. Shuden questioned Naga reconsideration, wishing she might abandon unnecessary strife and cooperate peacefully. Naga weighed his offer gravely, showing interest in joining their party for now. Shuden proposed fleeing jointly first, postponing disputes until everyone regained power and freedom. Anastasia questioned Naga's weakness, making Shuden flustered as avoiding the true account completely. Naga surprisingly agreed cooperation, startling Shuden and Anastasia while easing tensions among former rivals. The elf princess deferred judgment to the teacher, allowing Naga freedom regarding the suggested alliance arrangement. The trio accepted temporarily, setting aside conflicts and focusing jointly on fleeing the isle. Naga revealed personal motives plainly, wanting freedom first while expressing peculiar attachment towards Shuden. Anastasia responded with embarrassment and disbelief as Naga continued talking bravely without hesitation. Naga mocked Anastasia bravely, while Anastasia nervously described affection should precede any grave commitment. She suggested a ridiculous competition involving descendants, making Anastasia wholly shocked by suggestion. Anastasia and Naga contended deeply, while Shuden concerned their rising dispute might escalate. Naga rested uneasily on woven bedding as Shuden observed, noticing fatigue lingering. Anastasia listened silently as Shuden described spoiled shellfish caused sickness, although healing seemed encouraging. Hungry Naga requested food but rejected overeating shellfish, blaming weakness and cold unease for her condition. Recalling familiar events, Shuden trailed Naga beyond where she proudly declared hunting abilities with great assurance. Naga stopped abruptly while Shuden cautioned restraint, worried exertion might worsen healing. Naga ignored Shuden's warning, lunging inside salt water assuredly as demonstrating remarkable speed. Shuden observed astonished as Naga emerged proudly, displaying a catch grabbed through pure physical ability. Gripping another catch, Naga noticed larger prey farther aside and immediately chased greater hunting success. She pursued increasingly enormous catch, excitement rising rapidly while determination overshadowed caution. Her strength abruptly faltered, making Naga collapse to shore while Shuden and Anastasia moved over concerned. Naga's reckless hunting eventually overcame her form, making her coughing violently while Shuden supported her. Anastasia shielded her throat, silently watching Naga's miserable condition, while worry replaced earlier amusement. Embarrassed, Naga observed strange looks, while Anastasia departed wanting fresh liquid materials. Naga questioned her weakness bitterly, frustrated since extraordinary power offered small command over stamina. Shuden reviewed materials, recognizing available catch, plants, crabs, and game stayed insufficient for everyone. While discussing Naga's condition, Anastasia abruptly reached alarmed, reporting grave trouble endangering their campsite. The party located scattered debris everywhere, hearing extensive damage across base grounds. Examining footprints cautiously, Shuden recognized a pig caused devastation, suggesting unknown activity across territory. Anastasia pressed instant departure, thinking leftover there invited danger and increased risks for everyone. Accepting her warning, Shuden chose relocating their base offered the safest reply under conditions. Inspecting ruined materials, Shuden learned harmed containers and destroyed bottles deeply declined their survival situation. Furious over trespass, Naga readied pursuit promptly, viewing the devastation as a straight challenge. Ignoring caution, she requested confrontation, convinced eliminating the culprit prevented further strikes versus base. Shuden considered, recognizing the boar's territory expanded steadily regardless of previous attempts avoiding encounters. The enormous boar emerged prior to them, causing Shuden, Anastasia, and Naga inside a tense standoff. Shuden examined the enormous boar cautiously, recognizing confrontation became unavoidable, despite avoiding its territory previously. Anastasia cautioned defeat meant death, while Naga stayed composed meeting the dangerous threat ahead. Remembering Quakehog dreaded flame, Anastasia proposed rekindling flames, giving Shuden a feasible strategy. Shuden hurriedly attempted preparations, struggling under pressure as Anastasia observed his attempts steadily. Noticing their difficulties, Naga seized responsibility assuredly, determined to demonstrate superior endurance skills herself. Resolved to aid, Naga rubbed sticks furiously, rejecting to accept loss before the Quakehog. Anastasia observed expressionlessly while Naga struggled, realizing assurance solely could not create flames effectively. Naga persisted stubbornly near Shuden, draining herself further while frantically causing sparks from friction. Small smoke eventually emerged, prompting excitement from Naga, who immediately boasted about real flame. Disregarding Shuden's warning, Naga kept overexerting herself, driven wholly by pride and determination solely. Naga ignored fatigue once more, causing herself further until brutal coughing interrupted her reckless persistence. Yet delirious from overexertion, she with pride claimed success while accidentally making trouble about herself. Anastasia collected mystic force calmly, preparing a reliable flame source unlike Naga's chaotic attempts. A little fire emerged above the readied wood, drawing attention as Anastasia continued casting. Anastasia completed her spell assuredly, shaping fiery power inside a armament intended versus Quakehog. Anastasia demonstrated Ignis Orb effectively, hitting a plant and showing fire magic remained usable here. She described Isle sorcery borrowed existing elements, allowing practical spells without consuming extreme mana. Anastasia recognized Quakehog's weakness to flame, although confronting mighty monsters still carried significant danger. Naga admired Anastasia enthusiastically as Shuden listened cautiously, considering their chances versus Quakehog ahead. Eager for combat, Naga requested action, but Shuden prioritized preparing prior to risking a confrontation. As discussing strategy, Naga focused elsewhere, fiddling curiously as Anastasia heard near Shuden silently. Shuden showed his shaved beard, making Naga startled and momentarily incapable to recognize him at all. Anastasia admired the cleaner arrival, but Naga responded noisily, questioning her peculiar reaction and judgment entirely. Night reached, and the trio advanced jointly, launching their operation versus Quakehog with resolve and focus. Quakehog's harmed gaze sharpened abruptly, detecting movement across undergrowth. Naga stepped inside, view prior to the beast, waiting assuredly despite danger surrounding her. Taunting its wounded pride, the dragoness provoked Quakehog deliberately, drawing an enraged charge towards herself without delay. Shuden carried Anastasia along, next realized vibrations approaching rapidly, and looked his attention with rising concern. As Quakehog closed in, Anastasia collected magic force, preparing backing while Shuden observed with renewed determination. 1 hour earlier, Shuden verified gathered supplies, while Anastasia evaluated preparations needed for their strategy. Anastasia examined the built site cautiously, assuring Shuden and Naga their arrangement stayed workable. Shuden described positions, assigning Naga baiting roles as Anastasia readied the decisive spell. Anastasia outlined grave limitations, explaining the spell engulfed power fully and permitted one release. She showed a further risk, requiring extensive preparation time and making herself wholly immobile afterward. Anastasia described success depended fully upon luring Quakehog precisely when her readied spell completed casting. She warned maintained sorcery engulfed power rapidly, making merely 3 minutes for execution. Naga questioned her obligation, as Shuden identified defeat awaited if precious time disappeared completely. Anastasia estimated a skull blow might kill Quakehog, while form impacts merely restrained movement. Regarding grander options, Anastasia emphasized this custom isle enchantment offered their strongest useful solution. Shuden agreed protection role near Anastasia, while Naga remained chosen bait versus Quakehog's pursuit. Anastasia began chanting immediately, focusing completely as mystic force collected steadily between her palms. The spell expanded violently, forming concentrated strength, while Anastasia maintained command despite growing effort. Naga raced ahead ceaselessly, drawing Quakehog closer as Shuden monitored advancing vibrations after them. Detecting risk abruptly, she reacted sharply during pursuit, recognizing a surprising threat emerging ahead. Naga stumbled surprisingly as Quakehog burst across debris after her, closing space with frightening speed. Angered further, she tested Quakehog directly, rejecting humiliation as continuing the dangerous chase along. Waiting anxiously, Shuden observed peculiar delays and asked why Naga abandoned their intended route. Fatigue overcame Anastasia slowly, her senses fading while struggling frantically to maintain spell stability. She abruptly collapsed forward, causing Shuden into action before their cautiously readied plan unraveled. Naga clashed straight away with Quakehog, grappling fiercely to halt its advance towards Anastasia's position. Anastasia completed her incantation, as Shuden frantically cautioned Naga to escape the impact. Naga stayed entangled with Quakeog as Anastasia emitted Ignis Orb towards their place. The spell hit Quakeog's skull precisely, erupting violently and shattering its skull at once wholly. Dust filled the warfront as Shuden supported drained Anastasia, wishing their gamble succeeded. Smoke cleared, showing Quakeog alive, its armored skull enduring Anastasia's strongest strike without fall. Anastasia recognized the spell hit hardened protection, making Quakeog enraged rather than defeated wholly. Quakeog charged immediately towards them, while Shuden protected drained Anastasia from advancing danger. Accepting defeat, Shuden raised Anastasia and demanded retreat, discarding their collapsed hunting strategy. Bearing Anastasia slowed escape considerably, but Shuden moved forestward, wishing terrain hindered pursuit. Shuden fled bearing unconscious Anastasia, but Quakeog shattered Wood's obstacles ceaselessly and closed distance rapidly. Detecting risk, Anastasia awakened, reaching outward powerlessly while noticing Shuden's desperate expression clearly before her gaze. Rejecting surrender, Shuden charged Quakeog straightaway, hitting fiercely and risking himself to protect Anastasia away from harm. Quakeog's strike sent Shuden falling aside, making Anastasia collapse solely while fear rapidly intensified. She observed Quakeog approaching ceaselessly, its strong footsteps shaking earth while escape remained impossible. Quakeog lowered its skull and charged directly, causing frightened Anastasia to confront imminent risk. Prior to Quakeog arrived at Anastasia, Naga intercepted fiercely, grabbing its snout and halting motion wholly. Naga announced Anastasia her prey, warning people aside while guarding her from Quakeog's threat. Naga slammed Quakeog downward, stunning the beast momentarily as Anastasia observed the fight unfold. Quakeog ignored her fully, concentrating on Anastasia solely as lingering wounds distorted its judgment. Anastasia recognized Quakeog resented her sorcery strike, creating herself the creature's primary target now. Shuden studied Quakeog's injuries cautiously, identifying weaknesses affecting balance, catching, vision, and charging accuracy. Employing Quakeog's blindside, Shuden moved ahead decisively and stabbed deep inside its flank. Shuden targeted Quakeog's core area, thinking Boar anatomy similarities was able to reveal a fatal vulnerability. His desperate thrust dropped short, making Quakeog wounded but alive, while frustration rushed immediately. Quakeog reacted surprisingly, shifting direction and trapping Shuden beneath its enormous form pinned under crushing weight. Shuden fought frantically as Quakeog pressed harder versus his form. Anastasia observed powerlessly as Shuden gasped for air, recognizing his condition was rapidly worsening. Anastasia frantically called for aid, while Naga struggled close as Shuden remained caught underneath. Despite fatigue and wounds, she forced herself upright, resolved to rescue Shuden somehow. Shuden resisted Quakeog's crushing pressure, bracing versus a plant as searching for chances. He drove his armament lower into Quakeog's form, finally reaching a vital area effectively. Quakeog staggered aside from Shuden, but lingering hatred kept Anastasia steadily inside its focus. After defeating Quakeog, Shuden checked himself while Anastasia sat silently, yet rattled by risk. Shuden reassured her gently, explaining the brutal beast was dead and endangering nobody any longer. Relief overcame Anastasia, and tears emerged as she acknowledged dread had engulfed her completely. Shuden admired Anastasia's attempts and comforted her kindly, earning gratitude and fresh assurance despite lingering injuries. While Shuden readied Quakeog flesh, impatient Naga requested food, shifting tensions towards recovery. Shuden roasted Quakeog tenderloin with mushrooms, preparing a basic dish with partners. Naga eagerly sampled the skewers, savoring each bite eagerly prior to declaring the dish delicious and satisfying. As she devoured provisions noisily, Shuden offered thanks for Quakeog's sacrifice and nourishment to all present. Anastasia heard silently as Shuden expressed thanks, appreciating the gesture and shared endurance. Anastasia thanked Shuden for the dish, making him startled by her earnest reaction. Shuden and Anastasia enjoyed Quakeog flesh peacefully until rustling sounds abruptly drew their focus. A mysterious fiend female appeared from the forest, weakly approaching base while wanting food. Anastasia presented the newcomer as Melia Varnark, a fiend princess descended from the fiend ruler. Shuden remembered alerts describing fiends as dangerous manipulators responsible for numerous calamities across history. The dragoness opposed assisting Melia, arguing the stranger contributed no thing and had earned no reward. Melia rejected dangerous accusations, explaining hunger drove her work as requesting food and understanding rather. Amid discussion, Melia revealed magiclessness prevented independence, causing reliance upon people for immediate endurance. Malia pledged difficult labor without complaints, providing labor and dedication in exchange for shelter. Shuden weighed her proposal cautiously, while Anastasia acknowledged cooperation stayed crucial for surviving. After recognition, Malia gladly hugged Shuden, thanking everyone fondly while concealing subtle satisfaction beneath. Anastasia recounted Quakehog's loss fearfully as Naga focused feeding and considered later opportunities elsewhere. Melia secretly reassured unseen partners, plotting healing while maintaining appearances near Shuden and partners. Shuden described their motions stayed restricted because a brutal stinging Mohawk pig controlled surrounding territory. After defeating it, Shuden recognized exploration could expand across Isle, showing opportunities and assets. Melia noted their party grew larger while harmed equipment prevented continued liquid distillation attempts. Catching the report, Shuden announced gaining liquid remained their most important objective. Shuden intended locating island liquid sources, but flesh processing demanded attention since 4 remained awaiting consumption. Shuden admired their teamwork as Melia, Naga, and Anastasia collected jointly, preparing duties. Naga eagerly accepted exploration roles, thinking discovering liquid sources remained essential for everyone's continued endurance. Shuden warned her about hidden beasts, but she welcomed risk and tried challenges. Anastasia received jobs collecting firewood and distilled liquid, agreeing regardless of limited practice and skills. She concerned Shuden remained solely beside Melia, providing assistance while expressing concern about fiends. Anastasia described Melia's condition stayed fragile, let her volunteering lighter roles as recovering strength. Shuden proposed switching assignments as Melia and Anastasia agreed the arrangement without raising objections. Coming back labor resumed promptly as Shuden continued dismantling the beast, cautiously processing valuable remains. He instructed Anastasia amid butchering, teaching procedures as removing organs away from the enormous carcass. Anastasia observed a core injury, realizing a curse caused death where typical injuries failed. Shuden enthusiastically kept butchering, as Anastasia responded with surprise as organs emerged. Anastasia fought handling innards and odors as Shuden cheerfully admired their size and weight. Shuden took out the core effectively, but Anastasia collapsed abruptly despite following instructions carefully throughout. Melia reached bearing materials as Shuden realized Anastasia fainted, choosing she required immediate rest. Labor advanced steadily with Melia assisting steadily, accepting supplies from Shuden without discomfort or hesitation. Shuden processed flesh cautiously, thinking stable food supplies and exploration might improve their situation greatly. Picturing success, he pictured calm days awaiting recovery, free from pressing endurance concerns. While laboring, he recalled endurance videos, wishing to recreate useful techniques and practical crafts. Thoughts drifted towards childhood interests, but Melia's company stopped Shuden from relaxing completely. Melia mocked Shuden's playful ambitions as noticing the core had been processed remarkably cleanly. Melia gladly admitted Shuden's recognition surprised her, since fiends usually faced prejudice from people. Shuden showed he taught students in Tokyo, while Melia discussed usual fears towards fiends. Melia weighed herself fortunate since Shuden agreed her without judgment despite their differences fully. Questioning fiend prejudice, Shuden learned lower causes remained beyond conflicts between dragons and fiends. Melia described her father, mighty fiend Lord Varkark, emerged centuries ago and dominated realms. Melia described fiends lost supremacy when united peoples defeated Varkark, ending his reign swiftly. Describing history, she noted fiends reduced deeply and was able to no longer challenge rival powers. Melia emphasized modern fiends preferred peace, as Shuden recognized tensions involved complex historical injuries. Shuden considered on discrimination, understanding by invasions and individual circumstances yet shaped relationships. Recalling his recognition, Melia admitted his kindness genuinely touched her core and emotions. Shuden rejected approval casually, but Melia sincerely expressed gratitude, seeking to thank him correctly. Melia next approached carefully, invoking a charm spell as pledging cooperation. She described succubus sorcery influenced desires, though its effectiveness had reduced deeply on the island. Melia observed Shuden lowering his guard, thinking the spell eventually influenced his thoughts and emotions. Encouraging honesty, Melia questioned Shuden to express his wishes as he remembered her previously promise. Despite Melia's spell, Shuden refused intimacy, arguing physical fatigue made such actions unachievable presently. Melia agreed his account playfully, as intrusive ideas and embarrassment complicated Shuden's concentration. Shuden admitted preferring hobbies rather, picturing messy activities while Melia responded with visible uncertainty. Curious, Melia pressed further queries, sparking Shuden to grow rattled while considering individual interests. Recognizing his reply, Shuden approached Melia nervously as she answered with amused anticipation and curiosity. Melia confidently mocked Shuden, thinking her charm succeeded while his opposition reduced considerably. Naga abruptly came back from exploration, interrupting the occasion and Melia to hit Shuden. Melia abruptly said sorry to him, claimed dizziness as Naga observed Anastasia sleeping peacefully and unaware. The dragoness reported completing isle reconnaissance, prompting Shuden to question her findings regarding terrain. She showed a little pond remained there, likely serving as the island's only reliable liquid source. Naga outlined the pond she located, explaining its liquid emerged filthy and unsuitable for consumption. Catching the report, Shuden recognized the pond offered small relief, because sipping remained impossible. Shuden examined a pond littered with floating animal corpses as Anastasia and Naga observed anxiously. Anastasia questioned whether the liquid stayed drinkable as Shuden weighed crude purification methods, recalling an extreme endurance technique reluctantly. Shuden refused the unpleasant idea because no suitable tube remained. Next observed scattered flesh fragments indicating predation around and suspected a dangerous predator. Discussing possibilities, Shuden and Anastasia weighed contamination as insight about quakehogs showed creatures capable of using poison as a natural hunting adaptation. Examining signs, they determined poisoned liquid had paralyzed thirsty animals and a quakehog reshaped the ecosystem, completely sparking ecological collapse. Shuden described the quakehog's poison could devastate island ecology, warning that also limited environmental damage endangered everyone's endurance severely. Anastasia concerned about leftover freshwater sources, prompting Shuden to think silently while searching memory for overlooked hints elsewhere. Shuden remembered seeing banana leaves on the island earlier, next examined a plant and verified its identity without hesitation through careful observation. He gathered liquid from the banana trunk, offered it to Anastasia, and offered a useful alternative to dangerous liquid sources. Anastasia located the liquid refreshing and thirst-quenching, while Naga responded firmly to its bitter, grassy taste. Making a brief contrast, Shuden described banana plants stored significant liquid inside their stems, demonstrating how drilling a cut trunk provided available liquid reserves. Remembering endurance knowledge, he noted plant moisture solely was insufficient, but it revealed additional methods for obtaining liquid beyond streams. Leading Anastasia and Naga ahead, he pointed towards coconuts, explaining untouched fruits stayed available regardless of local wildlife, consuming many. Anastasia responded excitedly upon catching numerous coconuts still remained, while Shuden admitted previous searches shielded only a limited area. Wanting greater assets, he looked for a stick to knock down coconuts. As Naga questioned why climbing seemed unnecessary, Shuden warned that climbing plants carried wound risks, explaining safer techniques remained, though they required effort and careful command during ascent. Ignoring caution, Naga swiftly stepped the coconut plant herself and enthusiastically collected fruits, prompting Shuden to leave collection roles entirely. While returning towards base, Shuden considered that many island resources were by then exhausted and recalled several useful locations discovered earlier. To improve efficiency, he made basic stone blades as Mela managed saltwater distillation, handling the demanding heating process independently. Shuden continued dismantling harvested flesh as Anastasia cut portions inside thin strips, preparing materials for smoking and longer preservation. While butchering the beast, Shuden recognized much of its flesh was too tough for consumption. Although smoking preserved the usable portions, inspecting the smoking structure, he estimated the preserved flesh could maintain everyone for over a month, despite unsure later hunting. He determined food shortages were manageable for now, relying on coconuts and plant liquid. Although freshwater stayed the greatest concern, 2 weeks had passed without recovery despite constant smoke signals, and Shuden silently concerned since clear skies showed no rainfall. Watching the faraway horizon, the party heartened Shuden to remain responsible and continue leading attempts to secure everyone's survival. As darkness approached the woods, Anastasia worried about visibility while Shuden observed Naga had not came back despite nearing dinnertime by then. Abrupt scream echoed across the island, instantly drawing attention and alarming the party as they identified familiar distress. Realizing the voice belonged to Naga, Shuden moved towards the sound while Anastasia trailed closely across the darkening forest. They swiftly located Naga, and Shuden requested an explanation, expecting risk after catching such a desperate cry moments earlier. Rather of panic, Naga urgently seized Shuden and dragged him forward, insisting he follow immediately towards something important nearby. Following Naga's lead, the party reached the coast and noticed a faraway island where strange light flashed across the horizon. Shuden noticed the phenomenon cautiously, recognizing the glow resembled an aurora and suggesting the faraway landmass was surprisingly large. Anastasia described mystic phenomena needed mana, making the mysterious light peculiar, though she considered investigating the island despite uncertainty. Hope spread amid the party as Anastasia proposed usable magic might exist there, creating a feasible path home. Shuden weighed practical benefits while Anastasia concerned about her army, both recognizing the isle could contain valuable resources and replies, Milia showing small interest in continuing discussion about the faraway island discovery, while Naga suddenly declared her hunger and prepared to leave. Shuden halted her departure, reminding Milia they had by then investigated the crucial matter she desired everyone to witness firsthand. Rising excited, Naga urged the party towards base, revealing dinner included her favorite internal organs and demanding everyone hurry. The group's focus shifted wholly from exploration schemes as Naga enthusiastically prioritized feeding, encouraging everyone to satisfy hunger first. Returning jointly, they readied a large dish featuring preserved monster organs, turning dinner into a celebratory feast for endurance. While preparing dinner, Anastasia questioned feeding beast organs, though Naga insisted internal parts spoiled swiftly and should be engulfed first. Recalling the unpleasant butchering process, Anastasia fought with delay and questioned she could bring herself to taste the organs. Watching Naga enjoy the dish enthusiastically, Anastasia reconsidered her reluctance and questioned if the organs could perhaps actually taste acceptable. Naga eagerly demonstrated her approval by devouring a piece promptly, as Anastasia responded with overpowering shock and discomfort. After finally trying the food, Anastasia disliked its squishy texture intensely, while Naga guarded the taste and Shuden considered silently. Anastasia swiftly drank coconut liquid to remove the lingering taste, hearing relief immediately, while Naga observed her reaction curiously nearby. Naga sampled the coconut afterward but responded terribly, spitting it out at once and doubting the way anyone was able to enjoy it. The strange contrast continued as Naga fought with the beverage, making Anastasia startled by her unusually intense response. Anastasia arguing Naga lacked refinement since she refused coconut liquid while praising beast organs. The demoness stayed quiet. Milia quietly outlined Anastasia's peculiar tastes, astonishing everyone by contrasting them with her reputation as a warrior who crushed fiends. Milia's comparison triggered memories of brutal warfare, recalling the way a sheltered royal could not once understand numerous deaths across battlefields. Naga eased after feeding heavily, boasting that overflowing power filled her form while Milia listened without sharing the enthusiasm. Brimming with assurance and force, Naga challenged Milia to a battle, turning the peaceful dish gathering into competition. Shuden rested as Naga assuredly tested Milia. Inquisitive regarding her reputation, she requested battle. The dragoness stepped closer and admired Milia's power. Milia observed silently while Shuden identified the dragoness and reacted carefully. Milia attempted correcting a misunderstanding, but queries about inheriting the Fiend Lord's strength interrupted her. Naga heard deeply while uncertainty spread among them. Naga froze in surprise upon catching Milia's account. Her expression shifted promptly, showing disbelief as surprising information emerged. The demoness described she lacked mystic swordsmanship. She showed Twin Fiend's sister's specialties, prompting Anastasia and Naga to reconsider everything cautiously prior to making judgments. Naga rejected Milia's account and asked her skills. Anastasia outlined their separation, as Naga complained regarding enduring isolation wholly. The demoness described the accident that split their party. Naga and Anastasia heard, showing she survived several difficult days without partners. Milia admitted thereby hostility but remembered laboring jointly. Shuden fought understanding why somebody once weighed in foe treated him kindly. The teacher concerned Naga could perhaps harm Milia. Naga rejected any intention as Milia responded nervously and refused assumptions about her situation. Prior to anyone understood her intentions, Naga abruptly seized Shuden and dragged him close. The elf princess observed anxiously as uncertainty spread. Naga shifted closer to Shuden, taunting him as claiming improvement. Anastasia observed the situation promptly and moved ahead. The elf princess shouted for the dragoness to leave Shuden solely. She stretched both palms, putting herself among them while watching Naga cautiously. Milia located the situation funny. Naga abruptly reacted, realizing Shuden's form felt surprisingly firm, making her startled and completely distracted. Shuden swiftly clarified the misunderstanding and described the hardness came from an item concealed close his waist, not from himself. He revealed a special blade called Maiden's Mercy and likened its form versus Naga's earlier touch. The dragoness unmoved by the account. Shuden inspected Maiden's Mercy as Anastasia gazed blankly. Talk shifted towards the talisman's origin. making Shuden doubting its placement. Flustered by the misunderstanding, Naga noisily announced she needed attempt. She moved aside, determined to release excess force across movement. Shuden looked his focus towards Mylia's state. Remembering Naga's peculiar conduct, he cautiously considered the results of her eating habits. Mylia silently thanked Shuden for his generosity and leaned versus him. Anastasia observed quietly, noticing their rising faith and comfort. Naga raced along the coast under the night sky. Back at base, the people rested peacefully about their temporary shelter. The teacher examined the drying leather and reviewed advancement. Pleased with the tanning process, he readied leftover steps. Checking the man's device, he recognized hours had passed. He trailed instructions effectively, next worried about charge power running critically low now. Anastasia neared bearing a coconut and summoned out to Shuden close the campfire, her bright coming momentarily. She came back the device entirely charged, astonishing Shuden with surprising results. Her mystic training had grew enough to restore electricity. Afterward, they discussed her rising mystic research and the charging skill. Shuden proposed rest, but Anastasia admitted she yet could not sleep correctly. Shuden asked whether arriving at the odd phenomenon could return everyone homeland. Anastasia weighed the possibility and remembered the peculiar event. Anastasia described natural and mystic events sometimes interact surprisingly. She outlined odd environmental changes and beast transformations. Shuden concluded that mystic events probably contained mana. If they arrived at such a place, everyone might regain sorcery and return homeland. As Shuden consumed away from a coconut, Anastasia questioned for his opinion. He stopped quietly, cautiously organizing his thoughts before responding. Shuden described the ocean's visible space employing Earth's curvature. The man estimated roughly 4.7 kilometers prior to objects disappeared away from sight. Shuden estimated a further isle rose roughly 10 kilometers aside. Employing elevation and visibility, he described how they noticed it from their position previously. He doubted the estimate immediately, admitted the faraway isle probably lacked resources, especially fresh liquid by now. Crossing the sea remained dangerous, but Shuden thought reaching the other island offered their best chance for endurance until rescue eventually reached there. The elf princess noted mana could perhaps exist beyond the liquid. Shuden weighed that possibility and outlined abundant assets. Shuden heartened Anastasia, stating renewed sorcery could provide a route home if discovered there. The man pressed the woman to treat the expedition. Anastasia gladly agreed Shuden's scheme and imagined coming back home. Ideas of ongoing battles returned, reminding her duties. As weighing departure, Anastasia recognized she might not once meet Shuden again. The woman silently wished for an opportunity to repay his generosity. The teacher summoned the woman name, flustered. Anastasia faulted smoke irritation and excused herself as urging him towards rest. Departed solely, Shuden weighed improving his leather smoking process. Fatigue accumulated as dawn neared, creating rest seem increasingly essential for him. As sleep overtook the man, Shuden observed a odd dark vision. Puzzled by the abrupt image, he questioned what emerged prior to him. Shuden abruptly awoke within an odd vision. The dragoness, Mylia, and Anastasia encircled him carefully, greeting him cheerfully. Mylia gladly described they readied a special reward for Shuden. Stunned by the surprising situation, he promptly alarmed. Shuden recalled himself all she was merely a vision. Mylia playfully contended that dreams remained to be enjoyed without restraint rather. Mylia mocked Shuden about his self-command and proposed dreams considered hidden desires. Her confident attitude departed him increasingly rattled and unsure. The several females pressed their advantage and continued taunting him jointly. Shuden responded nervously as the vision grew also more overpowering. Shuden woke suddenly as Anastasia shoved Mylia aside, puzzled and flustered. He requested an explanation for all she happening. Mylia described she merely attempted keeping him warm amid sleep. Anastasia heard suspiciously as Shuden processed the misreading. Shuden shifted the subject and questioned regarding smoked flesh. Naga approached as base conversation slowly settled inside calmer discussion. Shuden rose and readied to retrieve the stored flesh away from his pocket. The elf princess and Naga observed carefully. Mylia smiled knowingly as Anastasia gazed in doubt. Shuden stayed oblivious to their rising predictions and confusion about the situation entirely. Naga abruptly recognized what pressed versus him previously. Her visage twisted with surprise, and she screamed the finding noisily in horror. Shuden abruptly observed his absent pants and alarmed. Anastasia cried out in shame as an awkward quiet spread throughout. The dragoness rose motionless prior to Shuden. Her intimidating company overcame him completely as strain rose sharply as she awaited his response. The teacher attempted calming Naga and backing aside. Naga advanced aggressively, next bluntly requested pregnancy, making him completely shocked. The dragoness announced she might seize whatever she desired. Anastasia protested promptly, arguing Shuden disliked such work and deserved consideration first. Anastasia lifted her palms and steadily opposed Naga's conduct. Resolved to protect Shuden, she readied employing her powers if essential. The elf princess stepped among the dragoness and Shuden, challenging her recklessness. Naga rejected the warning, as Shuden observed their argument uneasily close. The demoness silently smiled as observing the confrontation. She emerged confident, seemingly thinking events were progressing according to predictions about her. Anastasia contended that fiend conflicts might merely worsen their race's decline. Naga heard quietly as useful concerns replaced emotional reactions. Melia cautioned Naga about later penalties if strength came back. Shuden attempted stopping the dispute, wishing all might remain cooperative. Shuden suggested having offspring, rather of battling. His surprising suggestion stunned Mila completely, transforming the tense discussion inside uncertainty. Naga grew interested immediately, but he lifted a palm and asked for patience first for now. Shuden described worm customs where females choose partners. Shuden outlined a homeland ritual requiring battle prior to reproduction. He offered it as custom for determining suitability and fitness. The dragoness agreed its reasoning. Melia and Anastasia startled by his reasoning amid the peculiar discussion regarding reproduction. The dragoness summarized the circumstances assuredly. She announced that victory meant pregnancy, adding mystic skill could measure physical power. Melia asked the way occurrences arrived at this point. Naga agreed the proposal, while Shuden guided everyone towards shore for the intended contest. Shuden weighed Anastasia's skills and chose she should handle the duel. Melia cautioned him Naga stayed dangerous despite reduced power. Shuden described Anastasia's strongest sorcery needed preparation. Since practical battle requested instant action, those techniques offered small advantage. He considered on Naga's character and latest events. The man determined she relied heavily on power and preferred forceful solutions consistently. The dragoness assuredly readied herself for confrontation. Shuden understood persuasion might fail, thinking merely direct victory could shift her determination. The elf princess asked his decision, fearing unnecessary dangers. Shuden reassured everyone and agreed obligation, resolved to settle the circumstances personally himself. Shuden confronted Naga on the shore and set combat rules. Naga agreed promptly, understanding the contest might measure physical power. He admired Naga's enthusiasm as hiding his real motives. Internally, the man acknowledged inventing the custom specifically to affect her. Shuden studied Naga cautiously prior to battling. Recalling her fatigue and hunger, he recognized circumstances deeply favored his chances now. The duel started as Naga charged straight away towards him. Shuden lifted his guard assuredly, thinking victory stayed realistically achievable. Naga struck with notable speed regardless of her state. Shuden responded at once, while both fighters exchanged aggressive motions during chance clash. Naga fired unceasing punches toward Shuden. He withstood the assault cautiously, studying her motions while searching for weaknesses during battle. Regardless of lowered power, she struck ferociously and maintained pressure. Shuden stayed focused, thinking experience versus human fighters could aid. Shuden triggered a mental skill built away from observing numerous delinquents. By analyzing battling styles, the man aimed to predict strikes. Blocking a mighty blow, he likened Naga's motions to familiar opponents. Recognizing patterns grew his assurance amid the exchange. Shuden remembered fighters known for long limbs and strong strikes. The group's similarities assisted the man categorize Naga's style and prepare counters. Shuden studied Naga's strikes cautiously and likened them with familiar fighters. Merging observations, he slowly knew her battle style. His assurance grew as patterns grew clearer. The teacher mentally organized Naga's motions, allowing him to anticipate her work accurately. Naga fired a further fierce assault without delay, readied for the strike. Shuden responded immediately and positioned himself advantageously during battle. Using exact moment, Shuden diverted Naga's motion. Her charge faltered completely, and she plunged heavily inside the earth before spectators. Naga fought to grasp her abrupt loss. Shuden described he employed a throwing technique, exploiting her motion and reduced condition. Shuden announced Naga defeated and described her state. Dizzy from hitting her skull, she could no longer continue battling correctly. The elf princess checked if Shuden was hurt. Melia noticed quietly, as Shuden considered on the throw's effectiveness and Naga's stubbornness. The teacher talked assuredly with Anastasia. She recognized he gripped greater influence inside their party than she had previously assumed. Naga fought with unknown emotions following losing. Shuden neared steadily, offered her clothes, and attempted easing the awkward circumstances. Lying defeated, Naga acknowledged the outcome puzzled her deeply. Despite assurance in her power, fatigue and circumstances had reduced her. The dragoness asked her repeated defeats as struggling emotionally. Shuden heard silently as she surprisingly admitted losing could sometimes aid growth. Shuden heartened Naga and described her vulnerability. Relying merely on strength created strikes predictable, allowing opponents opportunities to exploit openings. He advised discovering a way from failures rather, of fearing them. Naga heard cautiously, recognizing improvement needed understanding mistakes and limitations. The teacher abruptly asked why he was mentoring Naga. The understanding amused him, but he continued providing direction regardless. Anyway, Naga questioned whether greater power stayed feasible. Shuden recommended moderation, as she admitted remaining near him might aid her improve. The dragoness acknowledged Shuden shifted her perspective. Flustered but genuine, she admitted nobody had ever made her reconsider strength before. Their conversation stopped when Naga felt abrupt chest ache. Puzzled, she complained, while Shuden struggled recalling any wound sparking it. Anastasia showed experiencing comparable signs sometimes. She described the strange condition emerged merely after arriving on the island surprisingly. Mylia heard with uncertainty as the people discussed options, rising worried. She questioned whether everyone had contracted an isle disease. Shuden secured food using quakeog flesh, coconuts, and plants, easing endurance concerns as guiding people. The party advanced across dense vegetation, searching for protein sources and hints, expecting discoveries hidden amid unfamiliar terrain. Malia smiled gratefully and admired Shuden's reliability. Next stumbled amid travel, prompting him to steady her before wound occurred and keep the pace. Anastasia observed closely, annoyed by Naga's attachment. Next nervously asked for Shuden's palm, fearing another fall during exploration while hiding her jealousy. Shuden inspected scattered fruit and a cut plant, identifying mangoes and concluding somebody had harvested resources on the island before their coming. Shuden described that mangoes contained useful nutrients and fiber, helping endurance attempts, while Anastasia listened cautiously and learned about unfamiliar foods. Anastasia noticed evidence across the island and determined one creature had engulfed many resources, fitting traces linked to the quakeog. Shuden considered the isle's ecosystem peculiar, recognizing the mighty quakeog should not have survived long under such limited conditions. The party discussed the mystery further, determining the beast originated elsewhere, raising queries about how it reached the isle. Shuden observed a strange structure attached to a plant, examined it closely, and recognized the object as a termite nest. Shuden identified the termite nest, recalling practical uses versus mosquitoes. Next decided collecting samples could provide another helpful endurance resource. Curious, Shuden tasted part of the nest, explaining termites contained protein and force, while Anastasia observed his peculiar experiment carefully. Anastasia questioned feeding insects despite available flesh, but Shuden argued testing resources stayed worthwhile because opportunities should not be ignored. He admitted the taste seemed acceptable despite its appearance. Next casually proposed Naga should try some prior to judging it. Naga furiously refused the suggestion, arguing dragons should not eat insects, while Anastasia silently revealed curiosity about tasting them herself. Malia eagerly agreed Shuden's offer, asking for a little taste, while Anastasia observed curiously as he passed over the termite nest. She swiftly swallowed the sample, next smiled confidently, making the people waiting for her honest reaction without revealing much immediately. Malia announced the taste surprisingly pleasant, though her flushed expression and sweating face proposed stronger emotions than her speech admitted. Anastasia gazed in amazement at Shuden's peculiar knowledge, while he casually described termites ranked amid the tastiest edible insects. Spotting a decayed plant, Shuden suspected larvae might be hidden within, next recommended searching it for another valuable endurance food. Malia grew interested in the larvae, Anastasia responded with shock, and Naga rejected the topic completely, hearing insects unworthy of attention. Shuden examined the rotten wood and verified larvae were present, explaining endurance guides outlined their flavor as creamy and nutty. Anastasia carefully asked for a portion and concluded little larvae seemed manageable. Excited by the finding, Shuden pressed instant testing. Searching lower inside the wood, Shuden uncovered an unusually large larva, leaving Anastasia completely shocked by its surprising size. Shuden weighed dividing the larva inside smaller pieces, but Anastasia hesitated, so he chose to consume the entire specimen himself. As Shuden tried the sizable larva, the liquid burst surprisingly across Anastasia's visage and Malia's chest, making both completely startled. Embarrassed by the accident, Shuden said sorry immediately, while Malia remained calm and proposed washing aside the mess at the shore. Anastasia next offered Shuden's harmed underwear, revealing she had discovered them and desired an explanation regarding their condition. Shuden described the underwear could no longer be worn, describing the way they had been cleaned cautiously and adapted as cloth. Anastasia stayed unconvinced, doubting why Shuden continued dressed in deteriorated clothing, prompting him to describe the waistband broke recently. Anastasia inspected the torn underwear closely and suspected sabotage, thinking the damage glanced deliberate rather than caused by typical wear. She remembered making briefly, next returning to find Malia leaning versus Shuden, linking the event to her suspicion, contended the moment seemed suspicious, she noting the underwear faltered exactly when Naga approached, creating coincidence difficult to accept. Malia guarded herself steadily, claiming Anastasia treated her like the culprit as Shuden heard awkwardly to the accusation. Anastasia pressed Shuden to consider her theory seriously, but Malia insisted she only desired harmony and friendship inside the party. Shuden rejected Anastasia's suspicions as coincidence and pressed everyone to stop arguing, but his reply left her strongly hurt, rejecting to accept his decision. Anastasia stormed aside solely, while Malia advised Shuden to give her realm temporarily. Moving along the coast, Anastasia complained about Shuden's faith in Malia, ignoring her fatigue despite traveling for many hours. Separated from the party, she wandered near stony crags and continued brooding over the disagreement occupying her thoughts. She abruptly sensed mystic force about the cliffs, causing her frustration to fade as curiosity drew her attention elsewhere. Trailing the mystic company, Anastasia discovered a hidden grotto containing abandoned belongings, campfire remains, and clear signs of habitation. Examining colorful boxes and unknown objects, Anastasia recognized the items resembled human possessions Shuden had previously outlined to her. Malia reached searching for Anastasia. Next, both noticed a massive blade, which Anastasia immediately identified as the magic blade Ragnarok. She responded with suspicious excitement, suggesting her absent brother might have stayed there. As Anastasia questioned her abrupt enthusiasm, studying the cave cautiously, Anastasia determined somebody had lived there. Next, accused Malia of creating the illusion barrier. Anastasia recognized the illusion barrier promptly, explaining frail mana created its construction flawed, allowing her to recognize the deception. Malia rejected responsibility and claimed ignorance, while Anastasia stayed unconvinced and chose the magic blade belonged with Shuden. Malia abruptly proposed Anastasia like Shuden, catching her off guard and shifting the conversation aside from the grotto's mystery. Grinning mischievously, she shoved Anastasia onto the earth. Next remarked that Shuden might not be arriving there shortly. Malia showed she diverted Shuden elsewhere while searching for Anastasia. Next mocked that Anastasia received more attention from her. Anastasia studied Malia's abilities, recognizing her mana command remained dangerous despite lacking battle magic suited for direct confrontation. Malia steadily noted Anastasia's vulnerability, as Anastasia readied herself carefully and evaluated whether the demoness intended hostility or intimidation. Covering one gaze, Malia addressed her absent brother assuredly, implying he observed everything and understood the situation by then. A dark aura erupted about Malia, startling Anastasia as the demoness underwent a dramatic transformation prior to her gaze. Wielding Ragnarok, the transformed Mila showed herself as the sorcery swordsman Ishwa, making Anastasia stunned by the revelation. Malia entirely transformed inside Ishwa, wielding the blade effortlessly, while Anastasia gazed in disbelief, unable to comprehend the unfamiliar power. Without hesitation, Ishwa swung Ragnar Fake and released a destructive blast, causing Anastasia backward as the strike shattered stone. Anastasia realized the blade chose specific masters, granting overpowering strength, while typical users could barely lift it or command its true might properly. Waiting after Anastasia, Ishwa lifted Ragnar Fake and readied another strike, declaring the weapon's true power could awaken completely. Before the blow landed, Shuden moved forward and seized Anastasia, pulling her aside as danger erupted about them and splintered. Ishwa pursued Shuden and Anastasia ceaselessly, swinging Ragnar Fake with lethal power, determined to strike despite their desperate attempt to escape. While chasing them, Ishwa sensed an surprising company ahead, sparking her charge to halt as something unusual entered view. Abruptly, Naga emerged before Ishwa, drawing her attention completely, while she tightened her hold and cautiously evaluated circumstances. Naga attacked first, but Ishwa stopped effortlessly with Ragnar Fake, left over puzzled because the creature's behavior seemed strangely unnatural. Shuden guarded Anastasia after him as Naga reached, while Ushwa confronted the beast and recognized Malia's information contained discrepancies. Shuden showed he tracked Malia's motions, while Ushwa questioned his interference and maintained a further matter required immediate attention first. Anastasia described Mylea and her brother Ishua shared one form, employing a special transformation skill that shifted identities completely. Shuden confronted Ashwa directly, realizing previous stories contained falsehoods, while noting both transformation formed a distinctly distinct personality and conduct. Naga recognized Ashwa as an foe targeting Anastasia. Next accused him of approaching their party only to eliminate them. Ishwa suggested joining troops versus Anastasia and Shuden, but Naga fiercely refused him, declaring Anastasia belonged under her protection. Rejecting cooperation fully, Ishua lifted Ragnar Fake and announced everyone present his enemies, preparing to eliminate the whole party personally. Shuren lifted both palms and attempted negotiations, but immediately realized Ishua carried sincere killing intent and wanted battle instead. Meeting the threat, he remembered confronting a delinquent swordsman before, and remembered the decisive technique he used effectively next. That memory displayed Shuden steadily contacting officials, resolving the dangerous situation without violence despite meeting an armed opponent directly. Drawing from practice, he charged ahead while lecturing Ishwa that reckless fatal solved no thing, and only ruined lives meaninglessly. Naga lunged at Ishwa aggressively, regarding the transformed swordsman as a dangerous foe while Ishwa steadily stopped her assault. Their clash intensified rapidly, with Naga unleashing repeated strikes while Ishwa guarded easily, rejecting to yield any earth. She pressed ahead again, attempting another direct strike, but Ishwa reacted instantly and read her movements before impact reached. Ishwa countered with an exact strike, causing Naga to cough violently as the abrupt strike disrupted her momentum completely. Recognizing a chance, Ishwa lifted Ragnar Fake overhead and prepared a decisive finishing strike while Naga struggled to recover swiftly. Shuden moved directly towards Ishwa, attempting to restrain him physically, but the transformed swordsman evaded capture across superior speed. Ishwa launched exact strikes without hesitation, causing Shuden onto defense while revealing battle skills far beyond Naga's aggressive style. Recognizing straight engagement was unachievable, Shuden searched frantically for a ranged option, wishing to disrupt Ishwa's rhythm somehow. Before forming a plan, he lost balance and plunged heavily, making himself revealed as Ishwa maintained complete command. Ishwa lifted Ragnar Fike above Shuden and claimed him as prey, preparing another strike while the caught male faced immediate danger. Cornered under Ragnar Fake, Shuden abruptly sprayed disinfectant into Ishwa's face, interrupting the swordsman's strike and creating a brief chance. The splash struck Ishwa's eye directly, causing intense ache and causing him backward while struggling against the surprising irritation. Seizing the opportunity, Shuden moved ahead and punched Ishwa hard, determined to stop him before another strike could start. Ishwa regained swiftly despite the strike, raising Ragnar Fake again while Shuden recognized he had underestimated his opponent's resilience. Before Ishwa could retaliate, Naga emerged after him and seized hold, creating a crucial chance to shift battle's flow. Naga grabbed the chance and struck Ishwa hard, repaying his earlier strike while causing him into a vulnerable position. Celebrating noisily, she assisted restrain Ishwa alongside Shuden, preventing further opposition and ending the dangerous confrontation effectively for now. Shuden bound Ishwa securely and started doubting him, explaining he desired replies while ensuring Mylea could not escape responsibility. Ishwa showed transformations stopped straight communication, since one consciousness slept whenever the other personality controlled their shared form. Shuden asked to speak with Myla rather, but Ishwa described switching voluntarily was unachievable because neither consciousness controlled transformations. Ishwa described transformations engulfed enormous mana reserves, leaving both siblings dependent on stored magical energy inside their shared form. He admitted repeated transformations drained his mana completely, stopping Melia's return, while Anastasia lacked insight regarding such peculiar magic. The teacher asked Ishwa's honesty and motives, noting there was no steady method available to verify any statement provided. Ishwa admitted their strike targeted wartime foes, explaining Ragnar Fake and depleted mana left him incapable to continue resisting. Accepting loss, he pledged cooperation, but Shuden remained cautious. Recognizing somebody with murderous intent required constant observation and suspicion. In past, Melia and Ashwa observed from afar, pleased their plan succeeded, thinking the encounter formed the perfect chance for action. They described their objective involved causing a reply, next instructed Melia to continue while she handled separate matters. Both launched forward across the air and released tremendous power, sending destructive force surging directly towards their intended target. A dazzling collision erupted between opposing troops, filling the area with overpowering light and making the outcome completely unclear. Ishwa detected unprecedented sorcery power and urgently summoned for Mylea, admitting she could no longer maintain command herself. Malia warned Ishwa that defeat might expose her completely to the released magic, making their effort barely sustainable. Accepting the risk, the duo triggered a hidden fusion technique, merging their powers jointly as brilliant light engulfed everything. Malia awoke solely on the shore, puzzled and drained, coughing heavily while struggling to understand her current situation. Recognizing the fusion succeeded, Malia determined Ishwa now shared the same form, next attempted contacting him mentally. Receiving no response, Malia concerned something went wrong, until a faraway explosion rang across the island and grabbed her attention. Malia discovered Shuden and Anastasia confronting a huge creature. Next observed secretly as Shuden exchanged powerful blows versus it. Observing from concealment, Malia observed the duo emerged settled, while Shuden and Anastasia seemed accustomed to surviving together by then. Malia questioned their relationship and questioned whether hostilities had finished, or if conditions simply forced temporary cooperation among them. Unsure regarding the circumstances, she chose to remain hidden until her brother awakened, cautiously avoiding interference with ongoing events. Recalling her own needs, she shifted focus towards hearing food, realizing endurance remained important despite the strange developments unfolding. Searching solely for food, Malia noticed a strange sound and questioned whether any edible fruit could still be found close. A wild boar emerged and gazed hostilely at Malia, while Oshua questioned why such a creature showed hostility towards her. Annoyed, she attempted casting sorcery versus the beast, but her spell failed completely, making her frustrated and vulnerable rather. The boars charged immediately, causing her to flee in panic as several beasts chased her ceaselessly through the area. Fleeing briefly, she discovered a mushroom and halted, next leaned against Ragnarok while trying frantically to recover her breath. Fleeing the chasing beasts, Malia tumbled inside a pitfall trap and plunged hard, dropping her composure during the surprising fall. Lying within the hole, she furiously requested Ishua awaken, furious that traps humiliated a member of her noble household. While recovering, she observed a sizable produce resting beside her, and immediately focused attention on the surprising discovery. Gripping the fruit, Malia finally sensed Ishua responding, next scolded him for remaining unconscious inside their shared form. Ignoring Ishua's uncertainty, she proudly smashed the fruit versus Ragnarok. Pleased her basic method opened it effortlessly without attempt. Malia with pride showed Ishua belongings regained from the shore, claiming she cleverly discovered useful items hidden within abandoned luggage. As feeding cookies from the luggage, Malia described she learned some modern language across newspapers and incomplete written notes. Watching Shuden and Anastasia away from concealment, she asked why they stayed there and asked Ishwa regarding the ongoing war. Malia described the elf princess and dragon princess had allied, while their troops remained marooned on the island jointly. Discussing Anastasia's stored mana, she suspected vulnerability away from overuse, acknowledged she had manipulated Quakehogs towards them repeatedly. Hidden close, Malia overheard Shuden's party celebrating victory and preparing future hunts, becoming excited by their surprising success. Malia weighed joining them, noting Shuden consistently exceeded predictions and handled situations distant improved than she predicted. Stepping ahead assuredly, she suggested infiltrating the party and destroying it internally, startling Shuden and Anastasia immediately. Back to present, Shuden still discussed with Anastasia and Naga across the island, while Ishwa remained tied at the plant and noticed them in quiet. Recalling Malia's warning, Ishwa abandoned sabotage schemes. Choosing leftover hidden offered greater advantages until she understood everyone better. Malia described abundant mana preserved the fusion, as Shuden discovered separating Ishwa now could permanently leave Malia turned. Ishwa suggested hiding their condition and silently gathering mana, thinking unsuspecting opponents might approach confidently. Anastasia cautiously inspected Shuden's injured palm, promising only to verify his condition and ensure he remained safe despite latest battles. They discussed Ashua, agreeing further queries stayed ignored, and choosing to keep him restrained temporarily until they understood his intentions. Preparing for cooperation, the party postponed making the isle, while Anastasia questioned why Shuden had trailed Malia and monitored her movements so closely. Anastasia questioned Shuden's actions, noting suspicious incidents involving Malia, while questioning whether he detected risk prior to anyone else did. Shuden admitted Malia behaved strangely, but lacking decisive signs, he avoided accusations since targeting an innocent person could worsen all she. Rather, he silently observed Malia's behavior and searched for hints, choosing caution rather than causing conclusions without proper verification. Anastasia emphasized maintaining peace stayed essential despite difficult conditions, as Shuden acknowledged cooperation offered their finest chance for stability. When Anastasia challenged his reluctance, Shuden described he preferred validating truths personally, refusing to judge people through assumptions alone, Shuden described his decisions arrived from an outsider's perspective, thinking everyone deserved a fair chance to escape jointly safely. He admitted arriving on the isle left him frightened and overwhelmed, next realized enduring complete isolation might have been unbearable. Constant beast strikes and poor sleep steadily harmed his mental state, making him struggling until circumstances gradually began improving. Anastasia heard silently as Shuden considered on their first meeting, recognizing the importance their encounter gripped for him. Shuden showed Anastasia's company stopped his spirit from collapsing entirely, crediting her backing with saving both his hope and life. Shuden pledged he might protect Anastasia and ensure everyone escaped the island, making her speechless as she absorbed his heartfelt speech. Anastasia recalled, when Malia remarked that Anastasia liked Shuden, while the elf girl grew rattled and observed her racing heartbeat, she struggled to understand her emotions, next gradually recognized those unfamiliar emotions towards Shuden might actually be love itself. Ishua peeked across the cabin door, noticed Malia within, welcomed her brother fondly while sitting confidently. She described that the room remained inside a vision shaped from Ishua's memories, prepared specifically for their discussion. Malia with pride displayed the way accurately the hut matched aged memories, pointing out details, including sheets Ishua once dampened and other forgotten traces. Exactly. Despite Ishua's embarrassment, Malia laughed and continued taunting, praising her own cautious observations as demonstrating the recreated information. Turning grave, Ishua asked about next steps. Malia pressed him to establish groundwork and seize the present chance prior to chasing greater plans ahead. Malia assuredly suggested rebuilding faith with their former partners. She thought friendship could be renewed, offering Ishua a practical path ahead. She described that leftover close might create chances. Since disguises were unachievable now, their harmed credibility needed direct attempt. Ishua heard silently as Malia maintained her calm. Her resolved expression showed assurance, though his reaction proposed lingering uncertainty remained. The talk shifted towards conflict. Malia envisioned overpowering victory, describing immense demonic troops advancing jointly and eliminating each remaining opponent. Warfront excitement spread across the collected fiends. Ishua's trembling palms drew attention, as Malia eagerly understood his strain as anticipation. Waiting above the warfront, Malia admired Ishua's dreaded reputation. She assuredly predicted bloodshed ahead while immense forces collected under them, Ishua alarmed at becoming the foe once more. He seized his skull, struggling to accept the situation while Malia observed steadily. Overcome by anxiety, the swordsman begged the demoness to replace him. He acknowledged lacking assurance and dreaded meeting everyone personally there. Malia promptly grabbed him and scolded his vulnerability. She requested nerve, arguing he stop embarrassing the fiend race entirely. Ishua asked for direction across tears. Malia rejected his worries, reminding him the prophecy favored fiends, and victory stayed inevitable. Malia described that two minds was able to coexist inside one form. Ishua heard cautiously, as recalling an aged poem and its meaning. Weighing the limited mana supply, Ishua recognized maintaining separate consciousnesses requested enormous force. The circumstances imposed severe useful limitations, rather. His mood visibly let fall as considering regarding separation. The demoness reassured him, reminding him their connection might not disappear wholly. Malia suggested basic communication rules and pressed Ishua to rebuild faith. She stayed confident, others was able to be persuaded once more. Abrupt noise interrupted the group's talk. Malia questioned Ishua carefully, wanting confirmation while he responded with visible confusion rather. In present, Shuden abruptly stormed inside the vision realm. He shouted repeatedly, hitting Ishua awake as the startled fiend fought to respond. Furious, the man requested the swordsman stop acting absent-minded. He maintained the fiend stay alert and visage reality rather of retreating. Tears shaped as Ishua withstood the severe scolding. Recalling the man's position, he compelled himself to hide vulnerability and endure. The vision suddenly finished. Ishua located himself seated with Shuden, Anastasia, and Naga, meeting an awkward gathering jointly quietly. Strong strain encircled the party. Ishua recognized their hostility stayed strong, while everyone quietly remembered previous strikes and betrayals. Shuden gave Ishua a severe penalty. Bound tightly, the fiend could merely consume amid meals and remain restrained otherwise. Ishua heard to the account in doubt. The teacher cautioned that surviving on the isle mattered more than comfort or pride. Discussing later schemes, Shuden chose Ishua needed constant supervision. He intended to keep the sorcery blade close and watch cautiously. Observing the swordsman's look, Shuden identified complete submission. The look recalled him of troublesome fighters whose opposition had by then fell. Drawing from military practice, Shuden determined severe discipline worked finest. He likened Ishua's conduct to recruits responding improved under firm authority. The teacher suggested investigating the demoness and Ishua's former base. Anastasia also desired to keep mapping the isle and gathering information. The swordsman noted Anastasia's peculiar quiet. The elf stayed withdrawn, still affected by latest events and lingering frustrations inside the party. The teacher described their foes had nearly killed them. Anastasia listened silently, while Malia agreed that Faith stayed difficult presently. The elf princess stubbornly refused her emotions internally. She again and again rejected any romantic interest, rejecting to acknowledge emotions directed toward Shuden. Questioned regarding her state, Anastasia swiftly diverted attention. She emphasized her military duties, arguing warfare mattered distant more currently. Anastasia gazed suspiciously as Shuden emerged worried. Noticing his poor appetite, a further partner asked if he felt unwell. The dragoness stayed unusually silent and withdrawn. Anastasia swiftly volunteered to investigate first, making Shuden unsure about everyone's conduct. Shuden rested in uncertainty near Ishwa. Watching the people act strangely, he fought to grasp the awkward mood forming. Both individual quietly judged Shuden for distinct reasons. Their private complaints showed irritation, misunderstandings, and rising dissatisfaction towards him. Ishwa noticed the strain spreading among all. Recognizing strife was brewing, he questioned whether the party was starting quarrels. Ishwa felt heartened by his counterpart's attempts and resolved to aid as well. He observed surprising cooperation, questioning whether Malia's relationship scheme was succeeding. Resolved regardless of his fears, Ishwa pledged to try his finest. The man questioned Malia to watch over him, making Shuden puzzled. Shuden asked about an aged suitcase as inspected scattered belongings, recognizing Malia had used the container for shelter. Naga excitedly examined a snack wrapper with lingering fragrance, while Shuden likened the packaging versus familiar modern products and silently considered its origin. Reading the label, Shuden located an expiration date distant ahead, suggesting the preserved snack belonged to a distinct era than their conditions. Demonstrating a fire starter from the suitcase, Shuden produced flame at once, making Anastasia amazed by the effortless method. Shuden considered that simpler tools rescued precious attempt, though traditional techniques remained useful when resources eventually disappeared. Shuden accepted with Anastasia's view, next checked the suitcase contents and discovered useful hygiene materials, making the party appreciate their fortune. Examining another package, Shuden realized it contained a female swimsuit, thinking such items might deeply improve cleanliness and comfort. Anastasia tried wearing the harmed garment, misunderstanding its purpose, while Shuden awkwardly described the absent section made it useless. Searching further, Shuden observed a strange strip within a further package, while Anastasia curiously examined it without understanding its purpose. Prior to uncertainty spread further, Ishua heard as Shuden swiftly clarified the mysterious item was simply food for consumption. Ishua likened the packaged item with Malia's description, concluding the scent and arrival matched sweets she had located previously. Recalling Malia's conduct, Ishwa suspected she had eaten one sample, next concealed her mistake since embarrassment outweighed admitting uncertainty. Shuden's stunned question shocked Ishwa wholly, as he misunderstood the situation and assumed an highly unpleasant possibility regarding Malia. Anastasia interrupted the misunderstanding, as Shuden steadily described the item was not food, making everyone focused on its purpose. Shuden cautiously outlined the product's actual function, explaining it stopped pregnancy and disease, while the people absorbed unfamiliar knowledge. Naga responded fiercely to Shuden's explanation, while Anastasia repeated the unfamiliar concept and Ishwa steadily noted feasible later concerns. Shuden clarified the item stayed useful despite age, but Naga hostilely requested its removal, rejecting any misunderstanding about intentions. Treeing reassurance, Shuden described measures for coming days, sparking Ishwa to question whether his attention centered. Shuden bluntly likened Ishwa's misunderstanding to ignoring clear evidence, making him strongly embarrassed while concluding he lacked sensitivity. Bearing the suitcase along, the party resumed exploration jointly, while Shuden chatted casually and Anastasia listened with growing curiosity. While exploring the island's interior, Shuden inspected fallen vegetation closely, next abruptly identified something important hidden among the dense growth. Trailing his finding, he went into a towering grove and immediately recognized bamboo, realizing the resource could transform their plans. He described bamboo might deeply simplify construction attempts, providing suitable materials for crafting the boat he had envisioned. Heartened by the location, Shuden suggested relocating their base close, thinking the area offered advantages for building efficiently. Without wasting time, he tested the cane immediately, hitting a stalk and validating it could be harvested efficiently. Shuden tested the regained sorcery blade versus bamboo, while Oshua complained its former owner lacked strength worthy of wielding it. Interested by Shuden's success, Naga eagerly asked for a turn with the weapon. wishing personal experience might ease rising frustration. Watching Ishwa struggle, Shuden recognized physical strength mattered deeply, making him secretly thankful his practice provided useful advantages. Anastasia and Ishwa acknowledged Shuden's impressive build as he examined the coastline, identifying an improved location for transportation. Shuden suggested assembling the boat close the shore, next assigned bamboo transport duties while keeping harvesting responsibilities for himself. Ishwa organized the labor assignments assuredly, while Shuden approved the arrangement since it allowed supervision of Ishwa amid bamboo cutting. Resolved to restore his reputation, Ishwa attempted bearing bamboo proudly, but immediately stumbled forward and plunged onto the pile. Struggling on the earth, Ishwa realized typical labor exhausted his swiftly, revealing how much he depended upon mystic power. Noticing his difficulty, Shuden sternly demanded Ishwa to carry smaller loads first, insisting reckless attempt might only worsen matters. Continuing his job cautiously, Ishwa transported a single bamboo pole and eventually reached Anastasia, who silently noticed his progress. Anastasia passed Ishwa a cane pole, provoking suspicion and irritation, while he understood the gesture as deliberate hostility rather. Naga finally came back, bearing supplies effortlessly, startling Ishwa, who immediately questioned why everyone had stayed waiting so long. Boasting confidently, Naga seized several bamboo poles and headed onward alone, leaving Ishwa stunned by the overpowering difference. Completely puzzled, Ishwa moved toward Shuden wanting replies, while he angrily demanded to know why Ishwa disappeared earlier. Amid dinner, Shuden admired everyone's attempts, whereas Ishwa sat exhausted, realizing physical labor had shoved his beyond limits. While resting after labor, Shuden readied another dish enthusiastically, though Naga complained about smoked flesh, despite continuing discussions eagerly. Using collected ingredients, Shuden cooked wild boar flesh with leeks and seasoning, with pride presenting the completed dish to everyone. The dish exceeded predictions completely, making Naga delighted by the taste as Anastasia and Ashwa admired Shuden's resourcefulness. Recognizing Ashwa's attempts amid labor, Shuden offered him a portion, acknowledging his contribution despite modest results away from labor. Accepting the food silently, Ashwa trailed Shuden's advice to recover power, preparing himself for demanding jobs awaiting everyone. Ishwa finally eased amid dinner, enjoying Shuden's cooking and feeling relieved after draining labor, while appreciating a rare peaceful moment. His satisfaction vanished when insects emerged within the dish, and Shuden immediately observed his reaction while wondering about the cause. Thinking Ishwa shared Mylia's adventurous tastes, Shuden enthusiastically offered cane worms, unaware she firmly disliked feeding insects entirely. Incapable to refuse the generous offer, Ishwa compelled himself to accept the worm, suspecting Shuden yet resented by conflicts. Shuden described the insects, tasted surprisingly fine when readied correctly, encouraging Naga repeatedly while proudly presenting his gathered supply. As Shuden described their nutritional worth, Ishwa suffered through every bite, frantically wanting sympathy while the people watched quietly. Mylia greeted Ishwa within the vision cabin once more. She rested steadily on the bed, anticipating a further discussion regarding their situation. Without warning, the swordsman moved ahead in panic. His stunned reaction proposed something surprising had disrupted the dream's usual flow. Ishwa emerged overcome and distressed, arguing he could not endure the circumstances further. Worried, Mylia promptly asked what had happened. A odd sphere manifested among the group. Mylia inspected it carefully as noting Ishwa stayed unusually calm despite the bizarre phenomenon. Recognizing memories shaped vision appearances imperfectly, Mylia determined the recreation differed from truth. The woman chose to use Ishwa's recollections rather. Shuden abruptly requested an account regarding the mysterious item. His intense expression stunned Mylia, making her wholly puzzled and speechless. Trying to grasp, Mylia asked him again and again. Once Shuden raised hearing it after loss, her uncertainty rapidly increased further. Learning the item originated from ingredients within peculiar cookies, Mylia warned versus feeding them carelessly. Next, she noticed an unknown term. Following receiving an account, Mylia determined it was an attachment related to male anatomy. Curiosity replaced uncertainty as the woman inspected. Shuden likened the item to cane. Mylia questioned what strange finding might emerge next, as people wished to end discussion. As discussing escape away from the aisle, Mylia glanced towards Shuden. His physical state grabbed her attention, prompting surprising admiration promptly. Mylia plainly admired Shuden's strong build. Her ideas focused fully on his power, showing fascination she struggled to conceal. Observing Mylia's reaction, the swordsman asked the woman motives. The suspicious tone highlighted the way peculiar her enthusiasm abruptly emerged. Flustered, Mylia swiftly guarded herself, She maintained her interest came from seeking a stronger form, not individual attraction whatsoever. The discussion collapsed inside chaos when a vessel showed numerous worms. Shudan gazed in horror as everyone responded with surprise. The swordsman acknowledged he fought with human interaction. Isolated inside hostile environment, his assurance reduced as frustration over her situation grew. Mylia heard cautiously as Ishwa complained. She proposed basic defeat might be simpler, revealing Ishwa had reached exhaustion. The talk looked grave. Mylia acknowledged that without earning faith their mission might fail and each attempt become meaningless. Resolved to improve, Ishwa pledged greater attempt. Strange noises interrupted her declaration, drawing attention and making abrupt uncertainty close. The vision suddenly fell as Shuden shouted for Ishwa to awaken. Half asleep, he protested as he frantically compelled awareness. The party collected cane across the aisle. Ishwa carried supplies alongside people, while Shuden supervised the collection attempt cautiously. Their labor advanced easily. Shuden admired everyone's contribution. Next revealed plans to start constructing a boat using collected resources. Explaining his idea, he outlined a basic bamboo raft inspired by endurance programs, thinking it offered their safest option. Queries swiftly trailed. Concerns about paddling, dangerous ocean beings, and transportation capacity forced Shuden to clarify crucial details further. Anastasia suggested reaching wide liquid prior to boarding. Her suggestions startled Shuden, who questioned how everyone might avoid dropping. Anastasia concerned regarding those incapable to swim. Shuden proposed clinging to the vessel. Next checked who possessed paddling ability. The replies discouraged him promptly. Ishwa and Anastasia acknowledged their limitations, validating the party lacked enough capable swimmers fully. Shuden stressed paddling stayed essential for endurance. Also limited skill could prove valuable amid emergencies or surprising ocean accidents. Grabbing his advice gravely, Ishwa abruptly started removing clothing. His surprising action startled Shuden, who requested an account at once. Ishwa steadily described he discarded unnecessary garments for paddling training. Amused by Shuden's reaction, he faulted his look rather. The swordsman observed Shuden staring surprisingly. Embarrassment spread across his visage as Shuden stayed distracted by unknown changes in appearance. Questioned by the people, Shuden described he had recreated Ishwa's swimsuit from memory, since he lacked suitable paddling clothes. Anastasia emerged dressed in a bathing suit as well. Stunned by its showing design, she complained noisily while everyone inspected it. Disregarding the argument, Shuden concentrated on practice. He described that understanding both persons' paddling skill remained the highest priority. The elf princess acknowledged complete inexperience with paddling. Accustomed to relying on sorcery, she showed crossing liquid had never required training. Ishwa acknowledged he barely recalled typical paddling. Past journeys relied on overpowering power, making sincere liquid experience surprisingly limited. Naga assuredly claimed paddling arrived naturally. Meanwhile, Shuden instructed Ishwa and Anastasia to start with basic airflow exercises underwater. Shuden began a brief test, anticipating them to remain submerged for several seconds prior to coming back safely to the surface. The attempt faltered promptly. Anastasia and Ishwa emerged coughing, complaining regarding salt water entering their gaze, ears, and mouths painfully. Watching their struggles, Shuden recognized practice might require much greater attempt. Naga drifted comfortably as the people continued discovering. Shuden described that comfort in liquid mattered prior to paddling lessons. He cautioned Anastasia that panic was able to become highly risky. Ishwa fought with airflow and stamina. Accustomed to relying on sorcery, he located typical paddling far more exhausting than expected. Resolved to improve, Ishwa examined Naga's motions carefully. He hoped cautious observation might aid him understand proper paddling techniques. Trying to imitate Naga promptly faltered. The dragon ruler sped across the liquid effortlessly, making Ishwa unable to follow. As focusing on diving training, Ishwa drifted farther from coast. Recognizing his position, he attempted leftover composed and focused. While practicing solely, Ishwa walked towards coast beneath the liquid. Abruptly, the seafloor vanished beneath his soles, making panic rising rapidly. Unable to touch the floor anymore, Ishwa lost command and fell lower. He reached frantically upward, recognizing sincere danger encircled him. Ishwa slept peacefully until a child abruptly observed the drenched bedding. Puzzled by the loud accusation, he stayed buried under blankets quietly. The demoness pointed at the man mischievously as Ishwa jolted upright. Understanding struck at once, making him flustered and flustered. She moved throughout the room, noisily reporting Ishwa's accident. Ishwa attempted stopping her, but motion beyond attracted attention rather. The door groaned wide, revealing 3 frightening figures waiting jointly. Their shadowed faces and stiff expressions promptly frightened all present. Dread overcame Myelia as she recoiled frantically. Confusing the visitors for beasts, she shouted alerts as trembling. Ishua screamed to Shuden, and the people abruptly seized him. The group's rough reaction sent bodies tumbling jointly, turning panic inside chaos. The swordsmen cried for Myelia and their parent. Uncertainty filled the room as everyone fought to understand the circumstances. Shuden observed Ishua lying under him surprisingly. Sweat shielded their faces as understanding hit, making both frozen in shock. Ishua regained awareness and fought to grasp occurrences. Brutal coughing trailed, causing him upright while memory stayed unclear. Anastasia and Naga gazed quietly at the situation prior to them. Both glanced shocked, watching the awkward misreading unfold wholly. The elf princess blushed as explaining Shuden's throat contact. She clarified it was emergency care meant to restore Ishua's airflow and awareness. The explanation showed Shuden's work trailed practical recovery methods rather than anything improper or strange. Shuden bore Ishua cautiously while the party readied to rest. He chose exploration should pause and focused on regarding Ishua's leftover wounds first. Anastasia observed Shuden away from a space and felt uneasy. A strange ache remained inside her chest, making her puzzled about its source entirely. Anastasia recalled herself Shuden merely provided life-saving support, also so she fought to dismiss her emotions. The elf princess picturing herself kissing with Shuden. The visions resurfaced clearly, and embarrassment remained as she struggled to dismiss it. Naga observed Anastasia's peculiar mood and stayed quiet. Meanwhile, Ishua stirred restlessly, displaying indications that his state was improving. Shuden checked Ishua cautiously and looked for wounds. Ishua answered weakly as enduring ache, showing he had not regained fully. Shuden inspected Ishua's wounded soul regardless of complaints. The care hurt deeply, sparking Ishua to shout and recoil instinctively. Ishua remembered dropping inside liquid during panic. His memories stayed fragmented. Although he finally recalled drowning prior to losing consciousness, Ishua abruptly recalled Shuden's life-saving recovery. Recognizing their lips had touched, he froze completely as embarrassment overcame his ideas. Shuden described the recovery steadily and praised Anastasia first. He recalled Ishua that all worked jointly to rescue him. The elf princess outlined discovering Ishua drowning and alerting Shuden promptly. Naga next bore him ashore, allowing recovery attempts without delay. Puzzled, Ishua asked why Shuden assisted him despite previous strife. Shuden heard silently as waiting for his response cautiously. Naga described endurance depended upon cooperation amid all present. She rejected hostility, although acknowledged that individual grudges could yet remain. Shuden stated that cooperation shifted all she among them. He maintained by grudges should remain buried as their shared fight continued. The man lifted in crucial question once more. The latest incident showed everyone depended upon both other for endurance and success. Watching straight away at Ishua, Shuden questioned for honesty. The man desired confirmation that the swordsman truly intended to stand alongside them. The teacher described the man's goal clearly and sincerely. He tried cooperation away from everyone and asked for that Ishua avoid betrayal wholly. He pledged to fulfill his obligation as a grown-up. He vowed to aid Ishua escape the isle despite of difficulties. Ishua eventually agreed Shuden's sincerity and accepted to cooperate. Relieved by the reply, the teacher felt their relationship improve deeply. Shuden enthusiastically hugged Ishua following catching his reply. The abrupt excitement overcame Ishua, whose reduced state caused him to collapse. While Ishua regained, Shuden readied a dish beyond. He placed cane over the flame, drawing inquisitive attention from people. He described his cane cooking experiment assuredly. The hollow stalk was able to serve as cookware as adding taste to ingredients. The bamboo dish completed cooking effectively over the flame. Anastasia displayed interest promptly, while Naga requested stronger flavors rather. Ishua inspected the dish inquisitively and asked regarding its contents. Shuden described it was broth readied away from available ingredients. Shuden with pride outlined gathering wild yams away from ruined territory. He identified familiar ingredients and felt pleased noticing useful assets once more. Naga tasted the broth carefully prior to reacting firmly. Regardless of absent ingredients, the taste impressed her distant more than expected, pleased with the outcome. Shuden passed the container along. He heartened Ishua to share the successful dish with all. Shuden abruptly declared Ishua wished to thank all personally. The surprising declaration grabbed Ishua wholly off guard and silent. Ishua alarmed when Shuden raised showing gratitude openly. Anastasia observed quietly while recognizing Ishua seemed completely unprepared for that job. Anastasia heartened proper manners regardless of Ishua's delay. She described that thanking somebody sincerely was simply respectful and expected conduct. Ishwa fought to collect nerve and steady himself. Anastasia stayed firm, arguing he make greater attempt and visage everyone. With visible strain, Ishwa eventually thanked Anastasia straight away. The elf princess answered politely, making both momentarily shocked by the exchange. Shuden noticed the interaction with pleasure and asked for more advancement. Although awkwardness stayed, the atmosphere felt somewhat less tense. Anastasia tasted the cane broth cautiously while Shuden observed. The taste startled her immediately, and she admired the dish enthusiastically. Inquisitive regarding Anastasia's reaction, Ishwa sampled the broth himself. He swiftly continued feeding, displaying distant greater interest than expected. The dragoness observed Ishwa's appetite and tested him playfully, rejecting loss. She agreed the unspoken competition and continued feeding confidently. The familiar taste stirred aged recollections inside Ishwa. He remembered broth from long ago and questioned whether smoked flesh once flavored it. Longing overcame Ishwa as forgotten events returned. The dish recalled him of faraway moments that had stayed buried deeply. Shuden silently observed Ishwa's emotional look without interrupting. Meanwhile, he offered additional servings as all kept enjoying the dish. Ishwa slept near Shuden and people about a dying campfire, but fragmented memories stirred his mind. In the vision, Melia leaned close and summoned Ishwa affectionately, creating him react instinctively prior to recognizing the familiar visage. The swordsman awoke indoors and confronted Mila straightaway. When she observed his distraction, he described he had been recalling by events from previously days. Melia agreed the reply, next cheerfully asked regarding his findings. Her taunting attitude departed Ishwa flustered and visibly tense. As the swordsman hesitated, the demoness proposed repeating a previous activity. Her remark stunned him, making uncertainty and panic unresolved while he searched for speech. Shuden gazed ahead with a peculiar expression, sparking Melia to grow rattled. Ishwa observed her reaction as she fought, grasping it. The demoness and the swordsman trailed Shuden's gaze. Understanding gradually shaped among them, and both froze while examining the awkward situation. The demoness cautiously pieced jointly the positions involved. Understanding hit her wholly, making her silent as the embarrassing misunderstanding expanded. Horrified by Melia's judgment, Ishwa moved to deny her beliefs. Shuden stayed grabbed inside the uncertainty surrounding them all. The misreading eventually cleared when Shuden described himself. Melia alarmed over her mistake, as Ishwa checked if he was unharmed. Ishwa described that Shuden survived since several partners assisted him. Melia heard carefully, relieved by the outcome but left over thoughtful. The demoness eagerly welcomed news regarding boarding a ship with people. Ishwa suggested eliminating everyone later, sparking her shock promptly. Ishwa questioned whether escape stayed feasible without relying wholly on people. Melia answered steadily, thinking circumstances could yet shift. Melia contended cooperation was essential for endurance. Ishwa reluctantly heard, as she emphasized fleeing first prior to considering any later conflicts. Ishwa agreed her reasoning and inspected their circumstances cautiously. He questioned whether victory stayed feasible once they regained power. The swordsman reassured Melia that their schemes was able to succeed. Sitting jointly, they considered on difficulties withstood since their mother's passing. A recollection emerged away from youth. Young Oshwa hurried their parent towards the market as Melia listened near them attentively. Their parent laughed at the worry and recalled them sunlight remained. The siblings with pride questioned if their hidden items were secure. Recalling the bustling town, the demoness recalled their mother's bright approval. Her approval delighted both offspring as they trailed carefully. The recollection kept at a butcher's stand. Ishwa excitedly asked for pork broth as their parent purchased ingredients with amusement. Their parent purchased pork as asking for extra flesh. The meat seller instructed Connie cautiously, trusting him to handle jobs. Connie assisted about the shop and shared the packaged flesh. Ishwa and Melia gladly agreed it as preparing games. The meat seller described that Connie was approaching maturity. With pride, he concentrated on teaching duties and useful skills. Watching the offspring jointly, their parent remarked that Ishwa and Melia remained energetic, despite days passing since relocation. Conversation looked grave as their parent showed the siblings were refugees. Hard life circumstances and poor nutrition influenced growth. The group's parent shared hopeful news that the Fiend Lord had fallen. She heartened the household to settle peacefully inside town. The recollection shifted near a cart base. Ishwa asked a further move, recalling promises that their stay might last. Their parent described relocation was unavoidable since they were fiends. Melia agreed it. Although she silently liked the village, Melia claimed she knew their mother's motives by then. Her blunt observation stunned Ishwa, who had wholly missed the reality. Recalling youth games, Melia remembered choosing the fiend role.
Other offspring mocked her constantly, turning the occasion memorable. Malia concerned fiends might become scary beasts. Their parent immediately refused the dread, rejecting to let such doubts define them. Their parent comforted the siblings fondly, explaining she never regretted raising fiend offspring and cherished them no differently. Inquisitive regarding their father, Ishwa pressed for replies. Their parent acknowledged she knew almost no thing regarding his identity. She showed an odd encounter 15 days previously. Amid widespread despair, an incubus emerged inside a vision and seduced her. Their parent described she grew pregnant and fled home solely. Flustered, she admitted, recalling merely his notable appearance. Their parent steadily instructed Ishwa and Melia to conceal their fiend heritage. The siblings heard cautiously, grasping the risk involved. Melia pledged to protect the hidden regardless of her clumsy nature. Their parent smiled, although worry remained beneath reassurance. Sitting jointly near the cart, the family embraced fondly. They thought their bond might endure, despite of difficulties ahead. The recollection shifted across calm days. Their parent worked diligently as guiding the siblings across typical moments in stability. Ishwa and Melia recalled traveling, discovering, and rising jointly. Their parents stayed a constant source of backing and comfort. Ishwa and Melia came back homeland bearing groceries. Anticipating a usual evening, they summoned for their parent without receiving any response. Entering the room, the brother and sister located their parent resting motionless. Worry replaced excitement as they neared her bed carefully. Their unanswered cries showed a harsh reality. The memory shifted towards a grave where mourning silently engulfed the household. Neighbors offered comfort and useful backing amid the funeral. Melia thanked them politely as Ashwa stayed struggling with overpowering grief. Discovering their parent died peacefully at 75 brought small relief. The loss deepened the group's loneliness inside an indifferent realm. As visiting the village market, the swordsman and Melia encountered Connie surprisingly. Recognition spread swiftly as aged memories returned promptly. Connie recognized the brother and sister and asked their unchanged arrival. His observation revealed a hidden they cautiously concealed for days. Grabbed off guard, the demoness rejected Connie's suspicion as nonsense. She hurried Ishua aside prior to further queries formed trouble. Back homeland, the brother and sister discussed their circumstances gravely. Connie's finding endangered the calm existence they maintained there. Recalling their mother's grave close, Melia reached a harsh judgment. The woman pressed the swordsman to leave the village permanently. Ishua considered on their promise to keep shifting and hide their names. He questioned whether calm settlement might ever become feasible. A brutal impact smashed the talk. Prior to either sibling was able to react, attackers burst within and knocked them down at once. Armed soldiers encircled the house and declared accounts about a suspicious male and woman. Their investigation swiftly concentrated on the brother and sister, captured and bound. The swordsman and Melia confronted panic and uncertainty. Authorities demanded their identities confirmed, fixing their dark fate. Officials verified the captured pair matched accounts away from villagers. Their chief promptly identified them as valuable targets, investigating further. Bound openly, Ashwa and Melia withstood unceasing penalty. Investigators determined the siblings possessed power far exceeding typical fiends. Scientists regarded the pair as uncommon opportunities. They intended experiments wishing to develop mighty military magic across studying them. Drained and hurt, Ishwa shattered down emotionally, longing for home and his parent, as Miley noticed his fought versus despair completely. Unaffected by their pain, the scientists rejected compassion. They demanded additional spells readied, regarding the pair as mere subjects. Melia withstood the strikes and ridiculed their captor's power. Her defiance startled everyone, drawing focus aside from Ishwa wholly. Abrupt dark blow erupted across the chamber. The assault smashed the scientist's assurance and threw the facility inside chaos. Hidden agents showed themselves and evaluated the circumstances. Their investigation uncovered a surprising finding nearby the imprisoned pair. Hurt and scared, Ishwa and Melia clung jointly. Witnesses inspected them carefully, reaching a decisive judgment about identities. A mysterious figure faced the brother and sister straight away. Recognizing their lineage, he announced them Fiend Lord Varnark's offspring without doubt. The mysterious rescuer pressed Ishwa and Melia to return to the fiend realm. His speech tested all they thought. Recalling their mother's grave, the siblings agreed a harsh reality. They eventually admitted they were fiends, not people. Escorted inside a grand hall, Ishwa and Melia confronted mighty forms. Their coming attracted attention from each collected fiend. Fenrir offered the pair prior to the leader. She announced them heirs bearing the previous fiend lord's bloodline and destiny. Many fiends questioned the claim and asked their heritage. Debate spread rapidly as Ishwa and Melia withstood scrutiny quietly. Uncertainty spread across the court regarding the pair heritage. A challenge emerged, demanding proof they held the Fiend Lord's strength. The leader agreed the offer and established severe consequences. Success pledged status as defeat meant death for them. The swordsman and Malia were brought prior to a legendary blade. Numerous fiends observed carefully as the decisive trial began. Malia stepped ahead first and grasped the armament steadily. Disregarding dread, she committed herself despite unsure penalties ahead. Observing silently, the leader rejected beliefs about bloodline inheritance. She thought true fiend lords emerged across strength solely. Fenrir recognized power groups were exploiting the pair. She concerned ambitious fiends regarded them as tools for strength. Opposition leaders requested instant execution when the blade stayed unmoved. They ridiculed the pair and tried to destroy hope, rejecting surrender. Malia grabbed the blade herself. She struck a stone guardian fiercely and demanded Ishua aside. Malia smashed the enormous construct with overpowering power. The crowd erupted at once, thinking a new fiend lord emerged. Excited by the achievement, the demoness proclaimed Ishua the later fiend lord. She looked swiftly, checking whether he stayed secure. The collected fiends accepted Ishua as their later leader. Malia observed silently while predictions and responsibilities abruptly surrounded them both. Ishua refused the celebration and fought with his fresh name. He maintained they had lived separately and asked their later moments afterward. Malia reached bearing news from faraway battlefields. She showed rising strife and hinted that enemies were by then moving, displaying bleeding on her palm. Malia described an assassin had struck. The woman stayed composed and treated the incident lightly. Assessing their reduced troops, Malia suggested a bold strategy. She proposed infiltrating enemy ranks and hitting surprisingly jointly. The swordsman acknowledged the group's position was worsening. Supporters were discarding their reason, making their faction increasingly isolated and exposed to rivals. Malia described that loyal followers had guarded them for days. Without success shortly, stronger foes might move versus them. She heartened Ishua regardless of the risk. She thought his destiny stayed unchanged and believed he could reverse all she. The brother and sister discussed the group's last opportunity. Eliminating a major threat amid the coming strife was able to restore their declining effect. The group's conversation abruptly halted. A strange noise rang across the area, sparking Ishua to react immediately with worry. As bound amid the plants, Ishua observed the restraints had loosened. The surprising shift immediately grabbed his attention and worry. Watching about cautiously, he discovered the magical blade lying beside an unconscious man. A risky opportunity abruptly emerged prior to him. Recollections of promises and forecasts entered his thoughts. Determination came back as he arrived towards the armament, despite uncertainty. Ishua silently looked aside and gripped the blade. He hid her motives, preparing to act prior to anyone observed. Near him, Shiden stayed unconscious, close. Gripping the armament tightly, Ishua quietly considered his next move and feasible escape. Shuden rested solely, studying latest events as gripping a pipe. The man's look stayed grave. Ishua neared silently and observed Shuden's state. Embarrassment shielded the demon's visage as hesitation grew prior to creating contact. Putting a palm on Shuden, Ishua inspected him cautiously. Shuden answered steadily, thinking his physical state remained stable and showed small concern outwardly. Ishua determined the state had passed and advised improved hydration. Shuden agreed the assessment without argument or opposition, providing only brief acknowledgement silently. As Shuden went aside, Ishua's calm collapsed wholly. Overwhelmed by humiliation, the fiend quietly wished for death rather while tears gathered behind gaze. Shuden collected everyone at the coast and went into the liquid. The party readied for practice, trailing his guidance across the calm sea. Ishua and Anastasia shoved themselves underwater and fought deeply. Their motions grew frantic as they drained. Both fell onto the sand, airflow heavily away from exertion. Shuden observed silently before returning attention towards another practical job awaiting completion. Using his blade, Shuden sliced cane inside usable sections. He focused on efficiency, turning valuable supplies inside assets for construction labor. Naga rested quietly as observing the preparation attempts. Shuden summoned her name and asked for cane poles, drawing her attention promptly. Naga stayed distracted while waiting near Shuden's labor area. He observed her peculiar conduct and silently wondered about the cause. Anastasia came back away from practice, drained and drenched with sweat. Shuden glanced back, noticing her state as she neared gradually. Shuden admired Anastasia's attempt and heartened proper hydration. Regardless of practicing diligently, she concerned since her advancement seemed frustratingly limited. Seeking to aid further, Shuden demonstrated palm motions used for floating. Anastasia observed carefully, trying to grasp both instruction correctly.
Shuden shifted near Anastasia and cautiously adjusted her posture. Trailing his direction, she concentrated entirely on discovering the technique. Anastasia swiftly grasped Shuden's paddling instructions and thanked him eagerly. Shuden admired her gift, impressed by the way rapidly she discovered. Shuden observed motion across the liquid and looked curiously. Oshua swam ahead with determination, pushing a cross-surf towards him. Arriving at him, Oshua summoned out noisily and emerged awkwardly. Liquid splashed everywhere as Shuden fought to understand the abrupt interruption. Shuden seized Ashwa and corrected his paddling skill promptly. Anticipating criticism, Ashwa grew nervous as listening to each word. He kept taunting Ashwa regarding his poor form. A playful slap trailed, making the fiend confused while processing the surprising remark. Shuden admired Ishwa's improvement and patted his skull fondly. Ishwa froze in shock, silently accepting recognition for sincere advancement. Anastasia observed the interaction away from a space. Noticing the approval, she determined paddling skill earned approval and attention from Shuden. Motivated by that idea, Anastasia moved ahead with resolve. Naga noticed quietly while the elf announced renewed commitment toward practice. As evening settled across the aisle, everyone collected about base. Anastasia practiced diligently as Naga rested near the fading flame. Shuden examined the cane structure and reviewed construction advancement. Pleased with the results, he estimated their vessel might finish shortly. Naga neared Shuden as he reviewed the completed vessel. He talked optimistically regarding making the isle, unaware of her mood. She questioned if he required something away from her. Her abrupt appearance startled Shuden, who reacted before responding the surprising question. Without warning, Naga fired a fierce strike towards Shuden. He recoiled in surprise, incapable to grasp her abrupt aggression. She kept charging ahead with intense resolve. Shuden asked her conduct again and again, but she displayed no sign of stopping. A further mighty blow plunged into Shuden's guard. Realizing her strength had shifted dramatically, he braced himself versus the strong power. Naga's unceasing assault compelled the teacher onto the defensive. Recognizing her transformed condition was risky, he looked urgently for weakness. A brief chance emerged amid their collision. Shuden responded promptly, attempting a counterattack prior to Naga could regain motion again. Naga grabbed Shuden's clothing and reversed the circumstances at once. The surprising maneuver slammed him down, wholly disrupting his scheme. Lying shocked, Shuden fought to grasp what happened. Naga had somehow executed and moved forward skill distant beyond predictions. Naga pressed the strike without delay and hit once more, stunned by her adaptation. Shuden questioned how she read across all she. The dragoness compelled Shuden underwater and pinned him down steadily, struggling for air. He coughed violently as trying to grasp her work. Leaning closer, the woman gazed down at Shuden with peculiar intensity. Her expression stayed grave as liquid dripped from her form. Naga abruptly pressed her throat versus Shuden's and shared air. The surprising kissing stunned both of them amid the struggle. The teacher recognized Naga was assisting him breathe underwater, puzzled and flustered. He questioned her intentions while she swiftly dragged back. Naga rose quietly with a stubborn look and avoided account. Moisture shielded her visage as she fought to steady herself. Naga acknowledged odd ideas had engulfed her mind since witnessing artificial respiration. Inquisitive uncertainty drove her to test the notion personally. Misreading the concept wholly, she proposed recreating the circumstances herself. Her blunt reasoning departed Shuden shocked and strongly worried. Shuden promptly refused the absurd reasoning and scolded her harshly. Reflecting cautiously, he recognized Naga's conduct carried grave risks. Reviewing their previously battle, Shuden identified Naga's risky growth. Her obsession distracted her deeply, but she yet defeated him. He determined he required stronger physical conditioning promptly. Losing a further match versus Naga was able to create penalties he preferred avoiding. Resolved to grow stronger, the teacher trained deeply. As he exercising solely, he abruptly noticed something away from the bushes. Anastasia wandered across the darkness, bearing lingering shame. Ideas of the previously incident stayed unresolved, making her uneasy. She observed their kissing earlier and grew worried. With teary gaze, the woman clutched her chest, uneasy since the jealousy. Anastasia brushed her teeth as dark circles displayed under her gaze. Recollections of Shuden and Naga's kissing remained, making her distracted and restless. Shuden observed her drained arrival and asked regarding her sleep. Anastasia avoided explaining her emotions, greeting him momentarily as hiding unease. Anastasia swiftly went aside, rejecting further discussion. Shuden observed her uncertainty, unaware she stayed bothered by witnessing intimate contact previously. The party collected about Naga, who operated a mighty electric saw. She focused deeply, cutting cane as everyone noticed.
The teacher admired Naga's power and skill with the machine. Anastasia heard silently, yet troubled, while Naga continued laboring. The teacher directed Anastasia and Ishua as assembling cane logs. Laboring jointly in shallow liquid, they secured sections tightly with rope. The vessel slowly took form under Shuden's direction. Naga bore supplies from coast while Anastasia and Ishua assisted fasten bindings. Noticing their advancement, Shuden chose practice mattered equally. He stopped construction and declared paddling training before continuing remaining work. The party inspected the completed framework along the coast. Several bamboo sections drifted steadily, showing their attempts were producing results. Anastasia gazed at the vessel with worry. Although construction moved forward swiftly, she dreaded her poor paddling skills might delay departure. Anastasia struggled during paddling training despite wading in shallow liquid. Frustration increased as basic floating felt surprisingly hard for her. As Shuden inspected the vessel thoughtfully, Anastasia hesitated close. She weighed asking something crucial but lacked nerve to start. Anastasia observed Shuden's grave look and misunderstood his focus. Thinking escape mattered deeply to him, she grew increasingly uneasy. Shuden stayed absorbed in idea, studying the vessel cautiously. Rather of strategy, however, the man concentrated fully on choosing its name. Anastasia's belief smashed when Shuden talked. Prior to she could react further, a further voice summoned for Shuden's focus. Ishua discovered a paddling method by instinct, keeping his skull above liquid across rapid movements. Shuden identified the skill promptly. Shuden admired Ishua's advancement amid training. The group's conversation shifted inside playful taunting when Ishua addressed him simply as human. Annoyed by the remark, the swordsman cautioned Shuden versus repeating it. Shuden rather proposed a proper title among teacher and pupil. The teacher described that pupils should respectfully call their instructor sensei. Ishua hesitated momentarily, weighing the unknown term prior to responding. Ishua silently summoned Shuden instructor at last. Catching it, Shuden responded with amusement, hearing the circumstances strangely familiar and satisfying. Shuden noticed Ishua that comparable to his pupils in Japan. While Ishua stayed silent, puzzled why Shuden stared at him strongly. The teacher casually patted Ishua's skull amid conversation. Watching from a space, Anastasia noticed quietly as keeping her thoughts hidden. Paddling training kept without success for Anastasia. Noticing all improved steadily, she faulted herself and dreaded becoming a burden. The elf princess imagined the people departing jointly without her. The possibility filled her with anxiety as uncertainty kept rising stronger. Troubling ideas filled her thoughts. She pictured being left after completely, sparking panic as uncertainty overcame her assurance. Anastasia shoved herself ceaselessly during paddling training, diving repeatedly. The woman declined, accepting her current limitations and weaknesses solely. Shuden gently gripped Anastasia's shoulder, catching her attention prior to fatigue declined. His worry startled her, making doubts momentarily shoved aside by reassurance. The teacher advised the elf princess to stop causing herself and rest. Catching his speech, she silently called him Master Shuden, revealing faith she rarely expressed. Rather than continue, Shuden proposed simpler jobs and a different dish. Anastasia discovered he had observed her attempt throughout 2 draining hours. The teacher supported the elf princess in the liquid, teaching proper floating posture. Nervous but willing, she trailed instructions cautiously. The elf princess fought to stay balanced as floating. Trailing Shuden's direction, she moved cautiously, though embarrassment and strain still affected her concentration. The teacher directed her focus towards the sky above. Both stopped practice briefly, gazing silently at the moon and numerous stars. Their conversation shifted away from practice to individual events. Anastasia described that flying high stopped her away from appreciating scenery beneath. Recalling her by, Anastasia admitted sorcery had mainly served combat. Constant responsibilities departed small opportunity to steadily enjoy calm sights. Regardless of Shuden encouraging relaxation, Anastasia declined easing her attempts. She stayed resolved to finish practice and avoid delaying all. Anastasia maintained on improving swiftly regardless of difficulties. The teacher proposed alternatives, explaining that failing one method did not mean defeat overall. The teacher heartened the woman not to criticize herself excessively. His speech eased her worries, assisting her reconsider her fight more steadily. He showed she by then knew floating improved than expected. Releasing backing momentarily, he displayed that she was succeeding independently. The elf princess rejoiced too early and resumed unnecessary motions. Shuden described those work disrupted balance, creating floating much harder than essential. Trailing Shuden's advice, she eased her form correctly. With newfound understanding, she readied to training floating employing correct skill. Anastasia trailed Shuden's instructions and eased correctly. Slowly, her form stayed afloat, allowing her to practice successful floating independently. Overjoyed by the woman's achievement, the woman with pride informed Shuden. Her excitement lasted briefly prior to an incoming wave hit surprisingly from after. The abrupt impact shoved Anastasia towards Shuden. He grabbed her securely, stopping panic while she stayed pressed versus him, gripped inside Shuden's arms. Anastasia grew rattled. His concern verified her emotions, fitting suspicions she had quietly carried by then. As moving back, she remembered Shuden and Naga meeting privately prior to. Contrasting memories cautiously, she started doubting their relationship again. Anastasia considered on Naga and Shuden's previously kissing. Although jealousy remained, she recalled herself their relationship was not her worry. Gathering nerve under the moonlit sky, Anastasia halted Shuden before making. Her emotions overflowed, and she eventually readied to reveal something crucial. Anastasia nervously neared Shuden and attempted showing her emotions. Embarrassment overcame her, sparking repeated stuttering prior to completing any idea. Gathering nerve, Anastasia eventually admired Shuden's reliability. Shuden listened cautiously, thinking she desired to discuss something much more crucial. Shuden attempted a reply but fought hearing speech. Anastasia observed anxiously, wishing her intended meaning had arrived at him correctly. Misreading wholly, Shuden determined Anastasia desired him chosen as captain. His confident reply promptly departed Anastasia puzzled and speechless. Shuden eagerly agreed what he thought was backing. Anastasia was able to merely stare in doubt as the conversation derailed fully. Anastasia collected nerve once more and tried talking gravely. Overpowering embarrassment interrupted her again, causing a further hesitant pause rather. Incapable to describe herself, she postponed the talk. She pledged to reveal all she once they effectively reached their destination jointly. The teacher agreed the woman's request without pressing further. Anastasia felt relieved. Although her emotions stayed unresolved and hard to express, watching towards the faraway isle, Anastasia strengthened her determination. She thought arriving at that coast might finally clarify her emotions. The conversation finished, and focus came back to measures. Shuden examined the raft cautiously while Anastasia observed beside him silently. The cane vessel was eventually completed. Shuden and the people collected along the coast, examining the completed vessel with satisfaction. Anastasia observed Shuden's worried expression and questioned regarding it. Naga stayed confident, thinking the vessel could cross the sea safely. Rather than responding promptly, Shuden stepped on board. He cautiously examined the structure as admiring its arrival and construction. The vessel drifted correctly on the liquid without sinking. Noticing everyone's labor succeed, Shuden felt relieved and strongly impressed. Waiting with pride atop the vessel, Shuden rejoiced its completion. The achievement brought him excitement as Naga observed away from other side. The party tested the completed vessel jointly, as all discussed its stability. Shuden felt proud noticing their attempts succeed. He described that oars might be essential for travel. Naga contended her power solely could move the vessel faster. Catching differing opinions, the teacher suggested choosing a captain. He emphasized cooperation, thinking coordination mattered more than basic speed solely. He questioned for nominations away from the party. Anastasia promptly recommended him, displaying assurance in his judgment and leadership skills. Naga understood the talk separately and promoted herself rather. Shuden heard cautiously as the captain selection debate officially started. Naga assuredly announced herself captain without delay. Anastasia glanced startled, as the discussion shifted aside from Shuden completely. Prior to the dragoness was able to settle the matter, Shuden interrupted. He responded firmly, drawing everyone's attention towards his surprising response. Shuden described that leadership needed obligation beyond power. A captain must make hard decisions and direct people across uncertainty. Continuing his explanation, Shuden outlined bearing burdens solely when essential. Anastasia heard cautiously as reconsidering the meaning of leadership. The teacher determined that instant departure was unwise. He chose the party should organize materials first prior to beginning their voyage. Shuden kept teaching endurance skills on the liquid. Anastasia and Ashua practiced cautiously as discovering how to understand sea conditions. 2 days passed amid constant practice sessions. Trailing Shuden's direction, Anastasia and Ashua effectively stepped aboard the raft independently. Pleased with their improvement, Shuden admired both pupils. Composed seas and favorable circumstances convinced him measures were nearly complete. The party enjoyed a larger dish than usual prior to departure. Amid dinner, Shuden declared an crucial decision for all. Shuden showed the voyage might start the trailing day. The party focused on the faraway isle waiting across the ocean. Naga eagerly imagined coming back homeland and recovering her power. Anastasia described that stronger mystic events could perhaps restore their lost powers. Excitement overtook Naga as she outlined later schemes. She boasted regarding regaining peak state once encircled by abundant mana once more. Her enthusiasm escalated inside outrageous declarations regarding raising numerous offspring. Her comments departed Shuden wholly shocked and silent momentarily. Flustered by the talk, Anastasia attempted regarding the topic. Naga promptly tested her, rejecting to let the matter pass. The argument intensified among Anastasia and Naga as Ishwa observed silently. Shuden stepped in, trying to compose all down. Shuden declared a celebratory dish prior to departure. He heartened all to consume correctly, emphasizing the demanding journey awaiting them. Naga promptly forgot previous arguments and concentrated on provisions. Her excitement spread across the party as dinner eventually started. Collected about the flame, the party shared their feast together. The mood grew eased as measures neared completion. All enjoyed the dish with sincere pleasure. Smiles emerged across their faces, replacing strain built amid latest preparations. Ishwa silently noticed the conversation as feeding. Watching the people interact, he seemed more comfortable and agreed inside the party. Departure day eventually reached throughout the isle. Ishwa and Malia silently discussed schemes while watching the sea cautiously. Malia talked regarding uncertainty beyond the ocean. They accepted chances might appear amid the risky journey ahead. The teacher greeted Ishwa amid the morning measures. Ashwa reported favorable weather circumstances and proposed the voyage should start shortly. Watching across the liquid, Ashwa considered on feasible future conflicts. He weighed leftover after rather than boarding the vessel. Shayuden refused the notion and pressed Ashwa to join them. Limited assets on the isle made remaining after impractical. Shayuden halted Ashwa from making solely and insisted he travel with everyone first, pledging practical survival lessons. The swordsman agreed a fire starter. Shuden warned that independence needed skills, preparation, and steady resources for long-term endurance attempts, solely with his ideas. Ishwa recalled guarding Miria. He strengthened his resolve and quietly reaffirmed that objective, despite uncertainty regarding later events. Anastasia summoned to Shuden as last materials were secured on board the raft. Departure measures had officially finished, and the voyage was able to start. The teacher thanked the isle for sheltering them across hardship. The party considered briefly prior to pushing forward towards an uncertain journey ahead. The vessel launched across wide waters bearing everyone jointly. Making the abandoned isle after, their long-awaited expedition finally began. Shuden and partners tense versus the vessel pole. Exhaustion weighed heavily, but the faraway isle stayed visible ahead across waters. Shuden let fall a packed sack onto the vessel and grabbed his air. He proposed a short break as assessing their leftover strength cautiously. The man checked materials and offered smoked flesh and coconut juice. Anastasia heard silently as he described their provisions stayed sufficient for the journey. Naga refused the dry smoked flesh, promptly showing obvious displeasure. Shuden noted their catch stores stayed plentiful, reducing concerns regarding provisions reserves ahead. Heartened by their situation, Shuden seized fishing gear and suggested gathering more assets. Anastasia and Naga observed him prepare as the vessel kept. The elf princess recognized the teacher had steadily expanded the raft's structure. Additional platforms, storage realm, and functions grew endurance chances. She admired the vessel's development as weighing later possibilities. Oshua listened near Shuden, although his explanation merely caused confusion, rather. The teacher with pride showed a banner displaying the raft's name. The man described it combined parts of their names inside one title. He eagerly treated the named vessel as a believed partner. Naga rejoiced a successful catch as Anastasia responded with awkward quiet. Surf rose across the ocean as circumstances shifted slowly. Anastasia summoned to Shuden, who stayed composed and monitored the wind. Anastasia observed dark clouds collected above the destination isle. The teacher described weather patterns was able to create localized storms. Shuden kept describing the way mountains compelled damp air upward. Anastasia heard cautiously as understanding the peculiar clouds surrounding that region. Thinking their coming was close, Shuden heartened everyone on board. Abruptly, a colossal form burst from the ocean beside the raft. The enormous creature rushed by with tremendous power and splash. Shuden froze in surprise while Anastasia struggled versus brutal surf. As the disturbance subsided, Shuden requested an account promptly. Naga identified the attacker at once and recognized it as a ocean beast. Enormous Kraken Jr. emerged from the ocean straight away after them. The creature's abrupt arrival verified the risky source of disturbance. The vessel lurched violently as all fought to maintain balance. Shuden demanded instant escape as the party paddled. A strong impact hit the vessel from after without warning. Shuden plunged down difficult and momentarily lost command amid chaos. Anastasia and Naga landed throughout Shuden as coughing saltwater again and again. The impact left everyone drenched, rattled, and disoriented on board. Naga faulted the huge squid for the strike and erupted with anger. Shuden at once accepted as she vowed retaliation versus it. Naga fired herself towards the Kraken Jr. without delay. She shut the space rapidly and confronted the ocean beast directly. Arriving at the creature, Naga grabbed one tentacle steadily and readied retaliation. The Kraken hesitated momentarily as her power startled it. Naga tore several tentacles apart and furiously requested submission. Pieces scattered across the liquid while the beast suffered strong damage. Naga glared at the wounded beast, anticipating victory promptly. Rather, severed tentacles started rising back, revealing in peculiar ability. The regenerated limbs renewed the Kraken's state almost at once. Naga moved forward again, realizing typical strikes might not suffice. The Kraken's tentacles bound tightly about Naga and restricted her motions. She fought fiercely underwater but stayed caught by power. Noticing Naga endangered, Shuden dove towards the beast promptly. He seized a tentacle steadily and attempted freeing her regardless of risk. He again and again stabbed the tentacle with a blade as gripping it. The strikes reduced its hold and formed an opening. The dragoness observed Shuden risking himself for her recovery. His intervention shocked her momentarily and interrupted her furious fight. Both emerged, gasping for air following fleeing the restraint. Anastasia checked Shuden's state as Naga observed him in quiet. The teacher halted Naga's reckless charge and asked her objective. He pressed her to focus on defeating the beast efficiently, rather. Naga heard as Shuden described victory needed understanding the foe. His advice recalled her that power solely was insufficient. He agreed the lesson and asked for direction promptly. He stressed their disadvantage at ocean as the vessel raced along. A further strike struck the vessel and disrupted their motion. Shuden fought to maintain command as Anastasia observed anxiously close. Recognizing the risk, the dragoness chose to act personally. She declared she might fly above and pull the vessel ahead. The dragoness announced she had collected enough mana for transformation. Anastasia questioned her reserves, but Naga stayed wholly confident nevertheless. A bright light abruptly enveloped Naga prior to all on board. Shuden and Anastasia observed carefully as the transformation process started. Odd markings across Naga's back responded first amid the shift. Little wings emerged surprisingly, drawing instant attention from witnesses. The dragoness attempted flying but located the wings were undersized. Anastasia questioned the outcome as Naga gazed in disbelief quietly. The worm ruler intervened and pressed versus Naga's chest. Sizable wings unfolded at once, lifting Naga inside the air. Ishwa questioned Naga's huge mana reserves as Naga rejected the worry casually. She agreed the surprising wings and readied herself for combat ahead. Naga launched ahead above the surf, resolved to exploit her newly created power. Shuden, Anastasia, and Ashwa observed away from the vessel. Naga flew ahead, pulling the vessel across rough waters. As Shuden, Anastasia, and Ishwa noticed land. Airflow heavily, Shuden observed the lurking squid shadowing them without hitting, realizing constant pressure endangered their chances of escape. Anastasia observed Naga's speed dropping and summoned attention to it, as Shuden learned her mana reserves were draining far too swiftly to continue. Naga admitted maintaining her transformed state had become unachievable, but she kept pulling forward, determined to reach coast before exhaustion forced a shift. As Naga strained, the vessel advanced, sparing everyone from crushing risk. But Shuden recognized losing her mobility could leave their party. Anastasia collected her thoughts and showed a risky plan, reminding Shuden about the spell she once used versus Quakehog effectively. She described how concentrated mystic elements could be compressed inside a single point, transforming dispersed power into an effective strike. Anastasia suggested directing coastal thundercloud lightning towards the chasing squid, while Shuden cautiously considered whether controlling its path was feasible. Breaking down the process, she described lightning by then possessed destructive power, requiring only brief wind direction instead of complex conversion. Anastasia admitted her insight came from studying smartphone charging methods, making Shuden startled that her explanation continued developing gravely. Anastasia described the plan required approaching thunderclouds above the stony reef, causing the party toward dangerous waters despite serious risks. Worry spread across the vessel as she tried Shuden's judgment, while Naga struggled along and awaited a decision. Shuden immediately demanded a sharp course shift towards the stones, surprising Naga, who questioned steering directly into danger, catching the objective. Naga agreed the maneuver, recognizing the reef offered their best chance to eliminate the chasing squid. The party advanced towards the reef despite collision risks, knowing defeat might leave them exposed, immobile, and unable to fight.
Shuden reassured everyone the gamble might succeed, explaining his assurance arrived from trusting Anastasia's judgment despite the dangerous conditions. Anastasia hesitated, but Shuden recalled her that previous crises were overcome across her notions. Also, when outcomes failed initially, acknowledging uncertainty, he accepted that surprising complications always appear, but dread alone could not justify discarding their chosen course. Ishua heard as Shuden expressed faith in his partners, thinking their combined strengths was able to overcome the threat confronting them. Shuden pledged full backing for the scheme, willing to risk himself since cooperation remained their strongest weapon versus danger. Anastasia silently vowed to keep Shuden alive, while Shuden lightened the mood by declaring the vessel a believed partner. Thunderclouds collected above the coast as the raft pressed along, bearing the party toward the hazardous reef and plan. Anastasia directed Naga towards the thunderclouds, but the dragoness responded abruptly as something surprising interfered with movement. The vessel scraped versus the reef and jolted violently, making Shuden and Ishua alarmed as they searched for the reason. A mighty current erupted under them, lifting Shuden and Anastasia upward while the chasing squid emerged from the ocean. The squid strike launched Anastasia inside the air, prompting Shuden and Ishua to react at once as danger closed about them. Noticing Anastasia endangered, Ishua moved without hesitation, drawing his magic blade and preparing a counterattack versus the advancing enemy. Ishua slashed across surrounding tentacles, clearing realm about the party while Shuden struggled against restraints and Naga remained engaged. Shuden grabbed Anastasia safely, despite the chaos, checking her condition as guarding her from further harm amid turmoil. Ishua described the squid's form resisted typical strikes, leading Shuden to conclude Anastasia's planned magic remained their best option. Ishua agreed responsibility for defending versus tentacles, while Shuden focused on supporting Anastasia as the battered vessel continued ahead. Entering the stony reef declined conditions dramatically, sparking violent shaking that endangered balance and made Anastasia's concentration increasingly difficult. Shuden heartened Anastasia to dismiss distractions and continue casting, steadying her position while unceasing impacts rocked the vessel. Abrupt jolt grabbed Anastasia completely off guard, interrupting her composure as the unstable ride formed another surprising problem. Repeated crashes throughout the reef compelled Anastasia to fight with her clothing and balance simultaneously, complicating preparation for the enchantment. Another brutal impact threw Anastasia backward onto Shuden, while Ashwa observed powerlessly as the unstable raft lurched across rocks. The impact departed Anastasia sprawled over Shuden, delaying her concentration as the surrounding waters churned with rising risk. A colossal squid abruptly burst from the ocean before them, causing Shuden to confront the monster at close range. Shuden responded with surprise, but Naga welcomed the arrival, resolved to settle matters directly with the persistent creature. Rejecting to retreat, Naga readied a last assault, gathering her leftover mana and charging straight toward the enormous squid. Naga released her leftover strength, driving a destructive kick into the squid's enormous face and staggering the creature momentarily. Seizing the chance, Anastasia completed her spell, summoning thunder from above and directing divine judgment towards the warfront. A colossal lightning strike plunged into the squid, engulfing its form in dazzling force as Anastasia unleashed heavenly bolt. Naga boasted noisily, convinced the defeated beast might threaten nobody once more any longer. A brutal surge erupted from the beast, hitting the party without warning. As Shuden, Anastasia and Ishua reeled backward in surprise, the blast opened an enormous cavity, pulling damaged structures and companions inward, while panic spread across the battlefield as everyone struggled versus danger. Thrown into churning liquid, Shuden emerged and reassured the people, urging them to cling tightly to floating debris while surf scattered wreckage around. Amid rough seas, Shuden looked frantically for Naga, spotting only a reaching palm before she disappeared beneath the liquid. Shuden noticed Naga struggling in the liquid and moved toward her immediately, catching hold before she fell completely beneath rough waves. Naga regained awareness and muttered weakly, making Shuden startled by her condition as he dragged her closer across liquid. Noticing her exhaustion, Shuden agreed a cloth bundle from Naga and listened cautiously while she described its practical purpose. Shuden secured the bundle about himself and shoved forward, bearing Naga across strong currents until danger appeared directly ahead. A floating structure bearing Dana model drifted into view, sparking Shuden to pause while Naga observed something peculiar after him. Shuden identified the Dana model flag and broke inside tears, realizing the vessel had carried them across disaster and unceasing seas. The exhausted survivors collapsed across the shoreline jointly, thankful to reach solid earth while surf retreated behind their scattered bodies. Shuden slowly sat upright, validating everyone had survived the ordeal. Next emitted a weary breath as strain finally eased.
Meeting the marooned Dainage model, Shuden quietly considered on its sacrifice, understanding how the damaged vessel preserved their lives. Still rattled, he expressed gratitude toward Dainage, next swiftly checked his companions, seeking reassurance that nobody suffered serious injuries. The strange fluid left Naga completely immobilized and reduced anesthesia as well, as Shuden recognized the creature carried lingering results. Shuden noted Ishwa stayed mostly unaffected, since small fluid reached him, creating him the only companion capable of moving freely. Without warning, Ishwa stepped ahead and pointed his blade directly at Shuden, creating immediate strain across the exhausted party. Recognizing the figure, Shuden gazed in uncertainty and called Ishwa's name, uncertain why his companion abruptly adopted such conduct. The disguised figure showed herself as Milia, shocking Shuden completely, while Anastasia admired the deception and identified her voice. Shuden observed in confusion as Ishwa and Milia appeared to alternate command, while Milia said sorry and described their desperate situation. Milia showed she and Ishwa had shared the identical form from the beginning, conserving mana as secretly waiting for opportunity. Disregarding Anastasia's helpless state, Milia steadily chose her as the first target, intending to finish matters prior to opposition emerged. Shuden forced himself ahead and pleaded with Milia to spare Anastasia, rejecting to remain, yet despite his reduced condition. Milia observed Shuden resisted paralysis improved than expected, next determined he avoided much exposure to the creature's strange fluid. Anastasia frantically warned Shuden to escape as Milia instructed Ishwa ready to strike, thinking eliminating him first might prevent interference completely. Ishwa lifted his weapon above Shuden, while Anastasia observed helplessly, fearing the strike might land before anyone could react. The fatal strike not once arrived. Miley abruptly hesitated, struggling internally, as Ishwa resisted and declined harming their instructor. Ishwa's effect grew, urging the demonist to reconsider. He described cooperation had proven valuable and shifted his grasping deeply, using the brief chance. Shuden suggested setting violence aside temporarily, wishing both sides could labor together and escape safely. Shuden's offer shocked the demoness. Ishwa emerged supportive, but she rejected cooperation promptly and questioned whether such faith made sense. Milia furiously argued their endurance depended on defeating enemies, arguing fiends remained hunted everywhere and could never secure safety otherwise. Ishwa tested Milia's reasoning, reminding her of shared experiences with people and doubting why she refused understanding. Continuing her argument, they described people lived far shorter lives while demi-people withstood centuries. As the elf princess stayed listening, the pair determined coexistence remained impossible despite fine intentions. Urging everyone to recognize reality, the truth made Anastasia shocked. Ishwa frantically tried stopping Milia, but she refused his interference completely and declared she might personally finish the strike. The fight for command intensified within their shared form as Ishwa pleaded repeatedly while Mila fought fiercely to dominate. Their strife suddenly stopped. A weapon stumbled from grasp, making Shuden and Anastasia staring quietly at this surprising development. Ishwa finally created command, but confusion replaced assurance as he examined himself and sensed something fundamentally different had occurred. Understanding hit at once, staring downward in doubt, Ishwa located the shared form had somehow divided inside two separate individuals.